Check it out! It's the Laugh to Learn podcast! What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for news and comedy. My name is Jacob Paveo, and I come to you from the Great White North, which is unfortunately fall weather. It's getting a little bit cold right now, but I come to you from the Great White North each and every Tuesday evening, Eastern Standard Time, fresh for download when you wake up Wednesday morning. You can listen to me on your drive into work, during your work day, on your way home from work, with your wife after work, or your husband, or your children, or your mom, or your dad, or your dog, or your cat, or a maple tree. I don't care how you do it, but you can listen to it Tuesday evenings Eastern Time. Every single thing that I do is completely ad-free, so please subscribe to the podcast on whatever app you happen to be listening to it on. Tell your friends about it, both in person and over social media. And if you're new this week, well, welcome to the podcast. I got to sit down with a great friend this week. I call him Adam the Engineer, and we got through some fantastic conversations. I actually lost my intro, which means that I'm recording it now after editing the whole podcast, so I just finished listening back through it. It was honestly awesome content. It's about 2.5 hours long. I learned a whole lot during it. I always do during my conversations with him. I hope you guys can pull something from it. So if you really like the content, please subscribe to it. Please tell other people about it. It's super awesome. Thank you all for checking it out. Thank you for sticking through it with us and sticking around this long. For everyone who's been coming back each and every week, thank you all so much. But I don't want to take up any more of your time because this really was a fantastic podcast, a great listen. I hope you guys enjoy it. Without any further ado, I give you Adam the Engineer. Welcome to the podcast. I'm joined today with my second guest and the first podcast I had to travel to. I'm joined today by Adam. Adam, thank you for inviting me into your home.
Great to be here, Jacob, and thanks for making the trip down.
Trip up, actually. I work like half hour away, so Adam's giving me too much credit. It was on my drive home, so it was actually easy for me to stop by. So part of the reason I asked you, you were one of the first people that I asked to be on the podcast, and I haven't ever actually told you why, but I think that I probably should. So part of the reason is that I think it's super interesting that you and I have been friends up to this point for reasons that to you are probably obvious right now as I'm talking, but to the listeners, they may not know. So we are different in just about every single possible way because we went to the same high school, but we really became friends when I was in a music program at the same school that you were in an engineering program. So two people that probably shouldn't have hung out together at all, but in the end, we learned to do way too many Jaeger shots, and that seemed to get us through the rough parts and figure it out here. So I want to start by asking you what got you into engineering, because that's really how you and I got onto the track we're on now.
Well, the whole time growing up, like I always knew I was going to go to university, and I always had a technical background. You know, I took everything apart in the house, so engineering just seemed like the right way to go.
Taking everything apart in the house. I lived with you in our second year at school. And I remember coming downstairs one day. I have no idea what the hell you were doing. I don't remember what time it was. It could have been 8 in the morning. It could have been 2 in the afternoon. But I got out of bed eventually. And you were sitting in the living room with a clock, a digital clock. And you had taken it apart, and your goal was to put it back together. which you eventually did. I don't know if you remember this. It was
No, I don't.
It was
I have
one of
no
our
recollection.
roommates, the girl that lived upstairs in the room beside me. It was her clock in the living room, and I guess you had taken it apart with the idea of putting it back together. So that is literally one of the...
Well, I didn't just take it apart for the sake of taking it apart. There must have been something wrong with it. Like, I don't just take things apart for no reason.
I think you wanted to take it apart, man. I don't know. I don't really remember what was going on, but you managed to put that clock back together right quick.
Yeah.
She never found out about it unless she's listening right now.
Maybe she is. Maybe she'll leave us a note saying she's listening to us right now.
So, you are super interesting in that the friends that you have typically at least tend to be more liberal, and you're not. So I want to get into that with you if we can, because I find it, I talk about all the time on my previous podcast. I actually even used to talk about this when I was on college radio in the good old days, about how people who disagree with each other should probably spend more time with each other, and they'll find a way to not agree, but to better understand where they're coming from with everything. So basically, I know your friends who are more conservative, right?
Obviously. Yeah, no, there's definitely some on both sides. And like, let me say first, honestly, like when you said like that, you know, there's reasons you're surprised we're friends. I thought that was the first thing you were gonna say, because, you know, I'm definitely way farther on the right, and you know, I would say you tend to lean more left, or at least more left than me, anyways.
Somewhat significantly.
yeah, significantly. And I don't know, we look at it differently, but I think like it all comes down to like, you know, first you have to be able to have a debate with respect, right? If you're not going to respect the people you're debating with, like, it's not going to go anywhere, first of all. And not to mention, once someone has been offended or like they're getting defensive, they're never going to take what you're saying seriously. They're going to be thinking, they're not thinking about what you're saying, they're thinking about what their reply is going to be. Right? That's and right. They're not listening to understand, they're listening to answer. And it's a huge difference, right? And if you want to be able to even get your message across, right? Like all these people that, yeah, they don't even want to talk to the other side, but they're trying to convert people in the middle. Like once you've lost respect, no one's listening anymore.
So coming off of that, I just kicked the table. There's a conversation you and I have had a lot of, and I actually credit you as being, and another person, for pulling me further to the right on this issue. Not quite as far as you are. But I was wondering if you could right now convert me to be pro-gun.
Pro-gun, yeah.
So you're an avid hunter. You're going in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I got, you know,
next week.
Season opener of ducks is at the end of September, and then I have a week moose hunt and a week duck hunt coming up this year. Like I save all my vacation, you know, during the year to go hunting. And no, so getting back to the actual gun debate, there's so many different sides to it, right? Like I think people don't tend to like fully understand what the right side is saying. They just saying like we're supposed to have our guns because like it's our right. And like I believe in that. And some people do, but they're like, well, why can't you have to take a course yet? Why can't you have to have a background check? And the right sides are
right now. You're referring to, just to be clear, American gun.
American yeah,
gun
for sure.
Policies.
This is the American side. And the problem with that system is when you believe that it's your right to own a gun, when you say someone has to have a background check or someone has to take a course, you're now making it, all the government has to do by a stroke of a pen makes it so you can't carry a gun. So now if you have a group of people who disagree, you already have all the laws in place. It doesn't take much. Now these group of people can't have guns because you disagree with them.
So then this is where we differ, because I think that, and I don't think I've talked about guns on this particular podcast, but I think that everyone should have the opportunity to own a gun. I think that if you have never committed a violent crime, if you're not on any sort of extremist watch list, and I have real problems with the watch lists that do exist today. So for the time being, I would actually remove that from it, because I know someone personally who got stopped crossing the border because he was on a terror watch list, and he's like just a dude who like you know is not involved at all, and it was a whole thing for him and his family to deal with. And that was actually coming back into Canada. So he was able to get into the United States, but he was not able to come back home afterwards. So I have real issues with watch lists. But I think if you've never committed a violent crime, if there's no policing reason, like we saw with the Parkland, Florida shooter, that he had on 3 different occasions been identified by the FBI, right? And they actually put him on a list so that he shouldn't have been able to buy a gun. I think those sorts of lists should exist. But I fail to see how in this year, not just this year, but this time, with everything that's going on, we should say that you have a right to own a gun above and beyond someone's right for their own life. In the US, you're not going to get rid of the guns because there's too many. The whole idea of like, we're going to buy them back. Dude, you're $1 trillion in debt. You're not fucking buying back more guns than people. You're like it's not going to happen.
An outrageous amount of money, not to mention like it's not a feasible task, right? And I think when you talk about the gun debate, you really have to split up the US and Canada, right? Like, because US is the right to own a gun. In Canada, completely different. It is not a right, is a privilege. And actually, the way the law is written in Canada, your license is actually excusing you from the law. It is illegal to have a gun in Canada, but the license is excusing you. It's not making it legal. It's excusing you from the law. So just even in the way it's written, right? It's definitely very pronounced that in Canada, it is not a right. The U.S. is a whole other story. And whether there should be like, you should have the right to have a gun, like, yeah, I agree you should have a right. Definitely agree you should have the right to have a gun. How far that goes as far as like government control and what the government has to do to stop you from getting that gun, it definitely becomes a gray area. But like when you truly believe and you're like, I have this gun because I'm going to protect myself from whatever tyranny or, you know, outside forces come in, you can't have it where like you strike a pen and it goes illegal. But moving on to the Canadian side, because that's where we are here in Canada, I don't understand where this is coming from. Like we don't have gun issues. Maybe in Toronto we definitely had a hot spot or a hot time, if you will.
We're still
of
in
like,
it though.
Okay, fine, of guns and gangs, but like, I don't know. Like I think it's just a very narrow group, especially in Canada, narrow group of the population. Like, an interesting fact, in Canada, if you pick a random house, you are more likely to find a gun than in the United States.
Yeah, that's true.
They have more per house. When you do find a gun, you'll find a fuck ton more, but you are more likely to find a gun in Canada. And it just shows like, okay, well, if that's the truth, we know everyone has a pretty good idea how many people in the States have a gun. It gives you an idea, like, there's a lot more people than I think, like, especially urban centers realize, like, how many people own guns in Canada.
But does it not prove the left-wing point that when you have... I think Canada has a gun control that goes beyond what it probably should, especially when we get into restricted carry and whatnot. And I think that's a waste of money. And we can talk about that after, but I think that it proves the left's point that strong gun control stops those sorts of things. Because there's really only a few places in the world where anyone can own a gun. That's the Middle East, which is fucked. Africa, which is part of the Middle East, but which is fucked, like Central Africa and the Congo, fucked, and the United States. The United States is the best of them, but when you're looking at that law where anyone can own a gun, I mean, you only have to look around. And there's more mass shootings in the U.S. than any other civilized country, by far. And I understand the argument that there are more ways that people die, but it seems to me like there's a really evident way to stop one of those ways.
Yeah, so like, of course, the topic of like all these school shootings is going to come out. That's what that's the hot topic right now for gun debate, right? And the thing is with all these school shootings is like, it's become a thing in the U.S., right? Every kid in school in the U.S. knows about school, like some kid coming to school and shooting up
But
the
so
school.
do we.
So do we. But
we had to do the same drills they do.
It's not as
It's not a thing.
It's not as active in our minds. And when we were trained in school, it was never said in such a way that it was like somebody came to the school. Like if someone came near the school that was like, you know, on a list, or like, why is this guy coming so close to the school? You know what I mean? It was never, you know, sold to us, if you will, in the sense of like, okay, so if one of you guys go crazy and start shooting up the school, like this is what we're going to do.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree completely. I think that's exactly how it was sold to us.
Oh.
What was with active shooters in the school.
No, active shooters.
I'm not necessarily saying a student.
Okay, that's where I'm making the definitive
But it's
line.
absolutely was done as like someone in the school with a weapon of some sort.
Yeah.
Mind you, like I said, in Canada, it's not a thing. Like, I mean, we can look up how many actual school shootings there's been in Canada. I would bet there's been less than 5 in the country.
The point
I can't look it up because I don't have internet access.
The point I was approaching was that, and I don't know, this may come off as the wrong way, or, but like it becomes something as like, this is something kids do. And I think this phenomenon happens in a lot of different cases. And, you know, I don't want to, I have like no psychology background. You know, I took my one psychology course in university that was mandatory, you know, study like the morning of the exam, like all online lectures. You watch the 7, do the midterm, watch 7 hours.
You're almost at a PhD is what you're telling us.
Anyways, but I think there is a phenomenon that happens is when you see something going on around you and like it becomes talked about regular as something that happens regular, it becomes something it doesn't have to maybe be normal, but like it happens. It's not a
possibility.
It's a possibility. Thank you. Exactly. It's a possibility. It's not infrequent. It's something that happens. And when it's a possibility, dare I say it becomes an option.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And actually, I do blame the media like very heavily ever since, because there were school shootings in the U.S. before Columbine. There were, like, you can look them up. There were not a lot, but they happened. But if you look at the trend, once Columbine happened, because that was white kids, let's be honest, it was 2 white kids in a well-to-do area, and the media was like, what the fuck? White people do this? Right? And it took off. Like, it made national news, and all of a sudden there's a spike in it happening. I completely agree, but my counterpoint to that would be that it's covered just as heavily in Canada. Because growing up, we knew about things. Well, we were a little young for Columbine.
I know, but I feel like we're separated from it. Like, I don't
we
know,
not
like
separated because we can't own guns like they can?
No.
Because our guns have to be locked.
No, because down there, it's like when we hear that story, it's like hearing like Florida Man's story, right? Like you don't think it's gonna like, you know, it's like, oh yeah, like that's what they do there.
Oh,
like,
I don't know. I disagree, man. I disagree completely. That's very close to us, dude. It's very close.
I know it's close to us, but it's like a mindset, right? Like it doesn't happen in Canada.
Right, but then you have to ask why. Like you have to extenuate the question to why. And if our media is covering it the same as their media is, and we get mostly American media here, like most of our news stories, if you look at the bottom corner, it'll say ABC, NBC, Fox, or CNN, right? Like we buy news stories from the US, especially when we were younger. Now Canadian media does their own thing a little bit, but go ahead.
Not to get too conspiracy on you.
Let's hear it.
But I'm sure the people owning and making the decisions at the top of the media corporations, whether you want to call them American, Canadian, I don't know, somewhere in Europe, I don't know. I don't have that kind of information. But I'm sure it's the same people. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the same people are making decisions of the news for the U.S. and the news for Canada. Maybe not around the whole world. I'm not that far out there, but I definitely think in such a close proximity, if you have enough money to control the U.S. media, the Canada is an easy fucking gain from there.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And it's it actually goes to Bill Maher's argument that for the news to actually be useful again, it has to be a loss leader. So like companies like Fox used to not make money off the news, right? They didn't have $45 million a year salaries for everyone on fucking Morning Joe, right? They made their money on late night television, not late night, but like not talk shows, but primetime television, right?
Yeah,
6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. That's where they made their money. And then football for Fox. But nowadays, news makes money. So just like in the US, just like in Canada, just like in Europe, what glues people to their television? Violence. Violence and sex. And they can't show titties on fucking Fox News. I mean, they try. You know what I mean? Those weather girls, not the ugliest looking ladies. But they can't show titties. What they can show is this guy with a gun who killed that guy or that group of guys.
Well, I
maybe
would say,
throw a girl in there every couple of months.
Just to maybe say that kind of in a different way. The way I see it in the media is like you have to take everything to the very extreme. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna do someone like being hurt, it has to be to the point of death. Because if it's not to the point of death, why am I watching? People are dying. Why am I watching people that are just getting beaten up a little? Or like love, right? It's the same as like talking about sex, right? Why do I want to see people who like, oh, they finally meet and they kiss? No, I want them to go all the way. I want to see it to the maximum. I want to see them, the love to the maximum, right?
But is that what the news should be doing?
Oh, that's what they do. I agree. Like that's not what they should be doing. And I don't know if there's a way to fix that, right? Because everyone is always going to have an agenda. Even if you fully believe in your heart, like I want to save world hunger, so I'm going to like put my media towards like putting heavy emphasis. It's important to donate money to world hunger and all that stuff. Like sure, like great cause.
It's
but
still
like
an agenda.
you still have an agenda, right? Like you can't like it's almost like you can't have an unselfish good deed, right?
Yeah.
Same with the media. You can't have someone running a business that's not trying to make money.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I agree. But along with agendas, then, right now, what do you think about how the liberal media? And I use that term completely willingly because I know there are people who are under some sort of spell that there's no such thing as a liberal bias in the media. It's why I try really hard to avoid pushing anything. Like I actively have to rewrite stuff that I write down because I'm like, I don't want to make jokes about Trump. They're just overdone. But I want to know your opinion on it, on how they have treated Trump's presidency so far. And yeah, we can go from there.
Well, first I'll say I don't like how similar the liberal media and the satire media is becoming. And that's, I think, a statement to how ridiculous the liberal side has become. Like people don't want to hear about Trump anymore. Like people actually like him and people are like, you know what? Like you can call him whatever you want, but he did what he said he was going to do. Like, yeah, he might have not have done it in the best way you like, and he might have made some dumb comments in between, but, I honestly think Trump sees it as, like, look what I can do, look what I can get away with. I'm doing the stuff I want, but, like, the rest of all this shit, like, the rest of what comes out of the president's mouth, bullshit. Doesn't fucking matter who it is. And I think, like, do I think deep down that's his point? Maybe. I think he's making it well. I think he doesn't give a fuck what he says. That's for sure. I think part of him fucking laughs about it. How can you not at that point, right? And he's like, I'm doing my fucking shit. He's not like our fucking government right now that has like how many ethical charges against them. Yeah, there's in the US, Trump definitely has people trying to take him down for, things they didn't like that he did because it's against their policy, but it's not like, you know what I mean? Like maybe I guess the ethical one might be with the immigrants. But like, man, like someone has to draw the line, right? Like at some point, I don't know if we want to get in the let's save the immigrant debate.
We can talk about it if you want.
No, I do want to, but
we
like we started with Trump.
Sure.
I don't want to jump. I don't like. Let's finish the thought, right?
So I have a question for you then.
Yes.
Because I have a very strong opinion about this. Do you think if we treated Trump, not we, but if the media, specifically the liberal media, had treated Donald Trump like they would have, like they are right now to any of these Democratic candidates, where here's 5 minutes of Biden, 5 minutes of Kamala, 5 minutes of Andrew Yang, 5 minutes of Bernie Sanders. SNL's not doing sketches on him. Jimmy Fallon, actually, I shouldn't say that. Jimmy Fallon has actually been good with Trump, but like Kimmel isn't having someone dress as like Medea calling Trump on Jimmy Kimmel while he was a candidate for the RNC. He wasn't even a presidential candidate, and they were already all over it. Do you think if the Republicans have nominated them, which I think they would have, and I think they clearly made the right choice by nominating him, but do you think if the liberals in the U.S. had waited until he had the nomination and it was Trump and Clinton, and then they came out with grabbed her by the pussy and fucking porn stars in Russia and wanting to fucking suck Putin's dick, do you not think that, as bad a candidate as she was, Clinton would have had a significantly better chance? Because I feel like by the time he actually became the candidate for president, no one gave a fuck anymore. It was a big deal when the primary voters were voting, but those are people who are farther to the right than you, who are like gung-ho right-wing. Like, that's who votes in primaries, right?
Right.
So by the time it came
sure.
around, everyone who's more in the middle, who would be generally a Republican voter, but maybe wouldn't have been a Trump supporter, they were already over it, because it was like, no, look at all the shit they're saying about him, and it's coming from the bullshit liberal media. I just want to know what you think.
No.
If it would have been a struggle for him.
So let me ask you this, and just give me a rough estimate of what you think. So left-wing media, what percentage of people watching left-wing media are voting for the left wing?
Do you have a firm number? Like,
No, I don't know. I don't know if that statistic exists.
Can you pull the mic a bit closer to your face? You're drifting a little. I would have to guess. That was my best Joe Rogan right there. Could you pull a little closer? I would have to say, I think far more liberal voters watch liberal media than right-wing voters watch liberal media. But I think far more liberal people watch. Sorry, I think more liberal people watch conservative media than conservative watch liberal media.
So. And I honestly, I would tend to agree with you, right? I would say liberal media is...
Because it's a joke. I can't watch it.
What?
Liberal media?
Oh,
I can't fucking watch it.
I would say
I hate it.
Liberal media is probably in the, like... And honestly, like, I'm pulling these numbers out of my ass, so please, no one take them to the bank. But, like, I would say liberal media is probably anywhere from 95% to maybe 85, 80%, where I'd say on the right wing... You know, it's a little, probably maybe a little less.
I think
maybe
it'd be about
90
60
to 70.
I would say like 60-40 on conservative media. Dude, everyone watches Fox. Look at their numbers. Like, look at Fox News, like Morning Joe and fuck, I don't remember the late night show. No, sorry, Fox and Friends is the morning show, and then whatever the fuck it is.
So I don't agree because of that point, because I think there's definitely more left-wing media to spread out the numbers.
There certainly are, but I think that if you combine all left-wing media right now, like, their ratings are so low, especially, dude, like CNN is actually off the charts. Like, they're not charting their news shows. That's how bad they are.
Honestly, man, like, I think
you basically have ABC and MSNBC, and ABC is debatably centrist.
Well, let me say as well, I think too, like, people will watch the media if it's the way they're leaning, right? If you're leaning more right, you're going to want to watch the people that agree with your opinion, right? Like, everyone likes to, like, you know, agree, right? Like, they don't want to hear someone be like, oh, this guy's a fucking idiot. Like, what is he talking about? But to get back to your point about, like, you know, I guess Trump being beaten to death in the media and it being like old news, right? Like, that's the same shit. Grab her by the pussy. I think, like, the point I was trying to make by asking you the percentages is, like, when you look at the right wing when you watch the left-wing media, the people watching that media are the people who were never going to vote for Trump.
That's right.
Ever in
That's
1,000 years. So, yeah, they've heard all the jokes. They're sick of them, but it doesn't matter. They're never going to vote Trump. The people who voted for Trump in the first place, they're fucking not watching all the type of shows that make fun of Trump, right? Like, they're just not watching it. The people who are in the middle, let's say, like, people who go back and forth from year to year, you know, and I'm not trying to say that as a bad thing. I don't think people who go back and forth from year to year are like, I'm not trying to say they're wishy-washy, they can't commit, because I definitely can appreciate someone saying, like, no, like, every year I'm going to look at the people, I'm going to look at their experience, I'm going to hear what they have to say, and I'm going to cast my vote based on who I think is best qualified. And, like, I've talked to people who, even when they vote, they say, you know what? I don't agree with their policies. I don't agree with them. But you know what? I think this person is going to do the best job running our country or our province or well, I guess there is no parties locally, but you get the idea, right? And that's the whole purpose of not having parties locally, right? Is because you're picking the best person from the job, regardless of side.
Yeah. Further to that, I was just Googling to see. Out of the 20 Democratic candidates there were 22 that announced officially this year. Actually, there were more than that, but 22 that actually campaigned and raised enough money to be considered by the DNC. How many do you think showed up on Fox?
Sorry, how many did you say there were total?
There were 22.
22 total. What was Fox filtering, or was everyone welcome?
Everyone was welcome.
8.
6.
That's pretty close.
Of those 6, only 2 are still actively campaigning. Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang.
So
that's crazy. Think about that.
Okay,
Think
wait.
that,
Sorry,
man.
before we get into that, I'm not as well versed on the preliminary series, like in the U.S., like picking their candidates. So
okay.
Like, are they still? Is the Republican Party still going to vote to who's going to be the leader?
So there is a Republican primary. He's been challenged by his name just slipped my mind. Can't remember it. You would know him. Anyways, he has been challenged. However, 3 states have already said that they won't allow a primary vote, which means he doesn't have a shot at actually beating Trump. But it doesn't matter. I don't care what his name is. He's not going to beat Trump. He's not going to be president.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so he was primaried technically, but the states can decide, just like here, how our parties can pick how you're elected. In the U.S., they do it state by state, and 3 states have decided that they're not even going to have a vote because they know, like, Trump is going to represent them. But the Democrats, of course, they are down to...
Oh, yeah, the Democrats for sure. They haven't voted. So, wait, another question, because you're definitely... Like, I follow politics, but I definitely don't know, like, you know, some of the small steps.
Yeah.
But the way, like, I guess I have it in my mind for on the Canadian side is... like, let's say Trudeau's in power, right? We're going to go into the next election. The only way Trudeau would not be the leader of the Liberals is if someone motioned to vote him out. They're not actually going to re-vote for a leader, but someone would have to vote him out for them to go into a primary, let's say. Is that about right?
Before the election? Before the election.
We're going to the election in October. Let's say maybe it would have had to happen earlier, but like Trudeau's assumed unless someone motions to kick him out. Right?
It doesn't actually have to have happened earlier. If you remember the former Barrie dude with the rape charges, Patrick Brown, was running...
Whoa.
Rape allegations. I've already covered it. He didn't fucking do anything. They just fucked him over
Okay. I'm just saying.
Doug Ford wanted his seat, and he has more money. And if you think that's fucking not true, I can sit here for hours and rag on about how Doug Ford wanted that spot. Anyways, in Canadian politics, it can be a week before the campaign, but because we don't elect a direct leader, they can motion to vote him out
Like
literally
halfway through.
Literally, they can motion the day of the election. Like, we can vote Trudeau or the Liberal Party as leaders.
Yeah.
Trudeau can take his seat, or any party, right? Take his seat as prime minister, or be proclaimed to be prime minister by the governor general, and then the next day they motion for a change in leadership, and he could lose.
Yeah. Okay, no, that breaks it down.
Because it happened 2 or 3 weeks out with Patrick Brown.
So before we get into the Canadian side,
I just did a whole podcast last week, by the way, for those of you who
listened to it.
are curious.
I did. I think
politics.
you very well done. I'll commemorate you on that.
Thank you.
I think it explained it well.
I'll do a backflip later, and you can give me $10 for a job well done.
No, and you know what? Like, I'm someone, like I said, like, I follow politics, and I follow what the topics are, but like, a lot of us don't necessarily know the inner workings. A lot about, like, definitely ridings and the general structure. It's some of the times those inner details, right, you don't realize. I'll say I have voted once in a primary. We call it primary here.
It is a primary.
Yeah. So I voted once, like the first time in the last national election in the primaries. Actually, sorry, I guess it was right after the election for this primary. So I did vote in this primary for this election. It was my first time, and I think it's a good thing to do, right? Like, I think there's definitely like some controversy in the way we get our candidates, because the people who are like, paying into a party are very much, further on the right or the left, and therefore the people very much on the right or the left are the people picking candidates. And I don't know, I think there's some like improvement that could happen there, right? I don't know if any thoughts you have, or if you think it could be done better or some way.
I certainly think it could be done better. I was a card-holding member of the Liberal Party since I turned 18. The day I turned 18, I signed up both in the provincial and federal Liberal parties of Canada and Ontario. But I pulled it. I pulled it when I was about a year out of school. I pulled it primarily because I announced last week, I still have no idea who I'm voting for, other than it's not going to be the Green Party and it's not going to be the Bloc. So it's going to be one of the big three, and it's very unlikely to be NDP. I can't stand Andrew Scheer, and Justin Trudeau's a fucking liar. So I literally have no idea who I'm voting for. But a primary reason why I pulled my support was because I don't support the way that it works right now. So by me, and this is just, I know that what I do doesn't make a difference. I'm not fucking stupid. But the way I looked at it was I paid whatever it works out to be, like about $120 a year, like $10 a month or whatever the fuck it is, to be a member of the party. And then you donate for you capitalize, and this is coming from an accountant, on your $150 donation a year. So you give an extra $40 on top of that. That way you do tax-free donations. Actually, it might be $200 now. You might be able to do
I thought you could do
$80.
any amount on your taxes for a donation.
No, it's only tax-free up to a certain point. Yeah, it's very small, actually.
Oh, you're saying you want to max out the tax.
Max out your tax-free portion, yeah.
Understood, sorry.
Yeah. You can donate however much you...
Yeah, because I was going to say, like...
I have to live, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not working for Trudeau
but I'm saying, like,
here.
you could put in $5 and still claim that $5 tax-free.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And actually, I remember, sorry, not to take this on a tangent, but here in Canada, we actually have a first-time donator.
Yes, we do. $2,000.
Yeah, so...
Like that.
Honestly, I had like my party membership, like I was explaining, I put on my taxes last year, but when I like started reading into all the tax rules, I'm like, fuck, this is so small. I'm going to wait till there's something I really want to put some money to, and then like I can maximize the amount. I don't want to waste it on.
So you just haven't claimed what you've done thus far?
Yeah, so I just didn't even put on my taxes. So now I'm saving. I think of the same thing for buying a house. I'm like, shit, I want to buy my first house better be big. Like, I know it maxes out.
It's maxed out at right. Well, they've upped it, so it's now 4 times your annual salary. Yeah, 4 times your annual income, up to $400,000 or $500,000. Anyways,
that doesn't make that okay. Anyways.
It's very small. It's very
small.
No.
Like I have a whole other set of issues with that, but let's not get into it.
But yeah, as I was saying, the reason that I stopped being a card-holding liberal. I'm still technically signed up, but I stopped paying, so I can't vote in primaries, is that I don't think it's right that someone like me who had the disposable income to pay for a party selects candidates for other people. I don't agree with it.
Oh, yeah, like, realistically, if you don't have money, like, you're shown 2 options.
People would tell you're shown 4 options, but...
Yeah, sure, okay, like, if you live... I don't know what reality you live in, but... Or you know, people that say those kinds of things.
You do have 3 options.
Oh, no, like...
You can't deny that there are 3 options right now.
As, you know, it's a bit of maybe unconstitutional or, you know, in the spirit of the system, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, when people tell me they're voting for one of those parties, I'm like, that's great. I encourage you to vote for that party, because the biggest thing we have going for us on the right here in Canada is like everybody wants to have their own liberal party. So I'm like, oh, well, if you didn't vote for them, you're voting for the Liberals. So sure, go vote for someone that's never going to get into power.
This is why I fucking hate the Green Party, Adam. I fucking can't stand it. You know how many votes we throw away?
Yeah.
The NDP, though, the NDP it's a union party. And the Liberals are not. Like, we are not. I say we as if I'm still, like, active. But the Liberal Party is not a union party. Whereas the NDP is that is the union party. Look at they are Oshawa, Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Alberta. You know what I mean?
But NDP has gotten more extreme in recent years.
Everyone's moved left. Everyone's moved left.
We don't really have a right-wing party.
No, we don't.
We have right-wing parties. They just don't make the ballot or get to go to debates because they're so small.
If you line them up, though, because I was looking at it last week when I was putting the show together, because I was like, okay, what parties should I talk about? I wanted to talk about like a few not fringe, but further to the left than the NDP and further to the right than the Conservatives. Mm-hmm. But dude, like for parties that actually garner votes nationwide, because I'm not going to talk about, this guy ran and got, 10% of the vote in northern Sudbury. Like that doesn't fucking matter, right? But nationally, you've got like Green who have 1 seat, Bloc have 10 seats, NDP who are around like 30 or 40 seats, Liberal are 130, Conservative are like 70 seats, right? So you have these 4 parties in the middle, and I guess it would go like left to right, Green or NDP, Green, Liberal, Conservative. And then all of a sudden to the left of that, you have the Marx-Leninist party. Like that's the next one. Who got any fucking votes?
Well, that's because the NDP is already so far left.
But dude, like they're not that far left. You can't say that they are communists.
When they started suggesting that, okay, let's just talk about provincial because that was most recent. When they start suggesting, oh, we're just gonna forgive everybody's loans. Yeah. Oh, we're gonna become a refugee sanctuary. We're gonna start shipping people in from wherever we can find them, and they're gonna have all their benefits, money to stay. Like I wish I remember the number, but how much we pay? I think it's over in the millions. How much we pay every hour here in Ontario just for our debt, and how much more they were blindly willing to rack it up. Like, can you imagine what they would have promised if we like had a surplus?
Oh, I don't disagree that they're fucking crazy. I told you I'm not going to vote for them.
Okay, fair enough.
But they're not Marxists. They're not saying that, Adam, you're going to pay 100% tax and we're going to give you back, $30,000 a year because you're an engineer, and this guy over here serves coffee for 10 minutes a day at Tim Hortons, and he's going to get his $30,000 a year as well, and he'll pay 100% tax because that's what Marxism is.
No,
you know what I mean?
Like, you know what? I think there's another trend, like, just on that, like, so many people are saying, oh, people call it, like, communism or socialism or Marxist, and it's like, it's not actually that. And it's like, no. When people say, like, when I say, like, okay, like, this is becoming socialist, people are talking about the concept. Yes, it's a scale of socialism. It's a scale of Marxism. It's a scale of whatever you want to call it. So I find the left just says, oh, well, like, socialism, everyone would make the exact same and, for no matter what job. Like, yes, of course, we all understand.
No, that's not socialism. That's incorrect. The left gets socialism wrong. The left is fucked when it comes to socialism. Like, these democratic socialists, they're not socialists. That's socialized medicine is not a socialist. Okay? Socialism in its actual form, what it actually is, would be everyone. So communism is where you pay 100% tax and the government gives you, everyone gets the same thing, right? That's communism. Marxism, Leninism, or whatever, Leninism. I think it's Leninism, the Leninist Marxist Party of Canada, the Communist Party of Canada. That's what you're talking about there. Socialism is where you make your money, you do pay an extremely high tax, like you're talking 70-80% tax, but what you get back is completely free healthcare, completely free schooling, completely free food, generally things like free transport and whatnot. That's not what anyone in the US at least is talking about. So when they're like, I'm a democratic socialist, for me, like as someone who like knows politics, literally all I want to do is be like, shut the fuck up, you're losing the election. Like that's what you're doing to yourself. By calling yourself that, you're saying something you're not, and you're doing it because people don't understand what socialism is, and it's like the N-word, where all of a sudden everyone was calling you a socialist, so now you're like, yeah, bitch, I'm a socialist. It's like, no, you're not. Stop. Like, stop right now. You know what I mean? You don't get to do that too. Like black people can do whatever they want. They were able to take that word over. You can't. We can't. Me as someone on the left, I'm like, no. That's not a word I'm using for myself. That's like people on the right suddenly being like, yeah, we're fucking fascists. Like, no, stop. Right now, that you are calling yourself a democratic socialist is not only losing you the elections, but it's proving to people who are educated that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Even if I support what you're saying, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So like when you start hearing things like the NDP are now calling themselves a socialist party, I'm very glad that the Liberals have yet to do that, but the campaign's only just begun. So I don't have much hope that that's going to happen. But like, you have to draw a very clear line that like socialist, like there are socialist policies. Everyone has them. Like,
right. And that's the point I'm making, right? Like, I think most people, when they say like, oh, like that's socialist or socialism, they're talking about a scale. They're not talking about, yes, it's not absolute socialism. It's somewhere in between. Like you said, some policies are socialist and some aren't, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just say like socialist, oh, well, we're not absolute socialists, so we're not socialists at all. Like, no, I would say I confidently say like Canada is a very socialist country.
No, not on global scale. When you compare us to the U.S., I would say, yeah, we are significantly more socialist than the U.S. But when you look around the world, we are actually we're more liberal, socially liberal, but like fiscally, we are not a socialist country. Like, dude,
what percentage of your money would have to go to taxes for you to say it's a socialist country?
I wouldn't draw the line there. I would say that it depends what you're getting for it. So I would say you're like right now we are taxed all in on average, like I think it's 53% when you do payroll tax and then consumption tax, right? Plus
road tax,
like property tax and we're taxed about it's like 52 point something percent. I think 52.3 was the.
Does this include the tax you have to pay when you die too, or what?
We're not. Well, I don't know. I'm not wealthy enough to pay a death tax.
Oh, it doesn't matter how much you have. You have to pay the tax.
No, you pay tax for what you pay tax for what you earned in the year.
No, I'm saying like all of the money you earn, all the money you have, every asset you own. When you die, 1% is the death tax automatically to the government.
I don't know about this. I'm looking this up right now.
Okay. But yeah, no. So that's a true fact. Like I know because like I've recently dealt. I wouldn't say recently, but like I've dealt with those situations before. If you own a house, you have to pay 1%. So it becomes an issue, right? What happens now? Like you have maybe you live with your kids. You die in the house. You don't have money, but you own the house. Well, the house can't be kept because you have to pay 1% of that now to the government. Why? Because.
So there is no death tax in Canada. I was almost certain.
I call it a death tax, but like for you for your money
there's
to
no
be
inheritance
passed on.
Tax.
Yes, there is.
No, it's a windfall. It's a windfall in Canada.
What do you mean by a windfall?
So a windfall is like a lottery win. It's when you come into money that you didn't earn. It's money you didn't earn, but that came to you.
Okay.
So in Canada, an inheritance is considered a windfall. So it doesn't matter how wealthy you are. When you die, you pass everything on. You do have to pay things like you have to pay land transfer fees and you have to pay automotive transfer fees and whatnot, but you don't pay a tax on the estate. We don't have that. It's been proposed, but we don't have that.
Okay, I don't know. Like,
yeah, like I was almost certain of that.
so I don't know if like we got scammed by the government or what, but we had to pay 1%.
Yeah, because like we've inherited a large sum of money in the past, and there's no tax. Like I just went through it a few years ago with a death, and there's no tax. Like I studied tax. There's no tax on inheritance. It's a windfall.
Well,
I just wanted to verify.
I'm gonna have to look
but it could have been something else.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
you've seen the tax book before, the tax code. You've seen my book before.
Maybe
it's
4,000
pages.
Maybe
sure
I'm missing something.
In
Maybe it's a lawyer fee or something else of why that 1% was taken.
But nonetheless, I don't disagree that we're overtaxed. Like, I don't disagree. My biggest problem in Canada, actually, I wouldn't say that we're overtaxed. I wouldn't mind the tax we pay if I was getting what I think, like what I could get on my own for the amount that I'm paying. If you understand what I'm saying. Like, the way that we spend, we just fucking blow money. Like fucking Robert Kraft when he's eating out fucking hookers at his fucking porn places he goes to or whatever, his whorehouses. Like, literally, we blow money like it's nothing. And it's one major problem we have that I actually can't stand. Like, as someone who is like, there's a lot of programs I think we should pay for that I know you would disagree with, but I still look at those programs that I think should exist, and I say, how the fuck are you spending that much money to do so little? And it's like there's far too much bureaucracy that I think having... it's actually a problem I have with parliamentary politics, because right now you have no conservatives in the room, and then when the conservatives eventually win, there's going to be no liberals in the room. And it's like all the power is taken from the other side, and you can change whatever rules and regulations you want because that's how parliamentary politics works. And it's not like the US where, like, if they pass a law right now and then the Democrats win in the fall, in January they can't come in and just sign a thing saying, like, undo it all. Like, no, they have to vote and pass to undo it all, right? Whereas our government can. We can just say, nah, well, no more, and move on. It's a kind of a problem of the single tiered system that we have.
No, and I definitely see, like, you know, to comment on the back and forth, right? When you switch sides and the other side just undoes what they do, and I think it relates very much to the topic of okay, fuck, I need a break.
Support for the Laugh to Learn podcast comes from you guys, all of you out there, my listeners. So please jump on over onto social media and give this a share. If you're over on Apple Podcast, formerly known as iTunes, rate me 5 stars, or any app, whether you're on Stitcher, Podbean, which of course are my fantastic hosts, any podcasting app you happen to use, rate me 5 stars, share it with your friends, post it on Instagram, post it on Facebook, post it on Twitter, and tell people about it in person. There are no ads. This is all you get for an ad, is me begging you for your love and affection. So please show me some love and affection. Now, that was a rather impromptu break that Adam forced upon each and every one of us, but it's been good so far. I hope you guys are enjoying it. And let's just get right back to it. So here is the next hour or so of my conversation with Adam the engineer. We are back from our break, our suddenly called for break. And I want to talk a little bit about, well, we can't talk specifically about what you do. Because you are working always on top secret projects, because that's the way it works in your business. But I want to get back to the topic of engineering. You told us at the beginning a little bit of what got you into it, that it was all about tearing things apart. You wanted to know how it works. Honestly, my head doesn't work that way. Like, you look at an engine, and I'm sure that you're like, oh, look, that moves that, which moves that, and it moves that. I look at it and I go, when I press the gas, it moves forward. And like, that's all I need to know about how an engine works. That's all I want to know about how an engine works. You know what I mean? So I want to know from you, having that sort of a mind, right? When you look at the world, I really want to better understand like how you see things. Like, does it extend beyond, because you are an automotive engineer or mechanical? How would you?
Automotive.
So you're an automotive engineer. Does it move beyond simple mechanics elsewhere and automotive? Like, do you look at like the wind blowing and then like wonder about the physics related, like the fluid dynamics related, or like how much does it extend in your mind?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Well, first I'll start by like giving a brief background of where my knowledge set comes from. So currently I work as an automotive engineer. I work for a supplier for automotive companies, so not for an OEM. So an OEM would be, for example, like Honda, Toyota, those kinds of companies, the people whose names you see on the car. I work for one of the companies that would sell parts to those companies, because obviously it's too big of a job for one company to handle on its own. So I say I have an automotive degree because I went to the only school. I've heard they've added some, but some of the ones that I've looked into are just technician courses, but I went to the only school that in Canada that is specialized in automotive, so my degree says automotive engineer. So that's a bit of my background. But to get to your question about like how do I see the world, so I'll start with an example. So actually a few years ago, Jacob and I went on a road trip out east, and
that was only last year, right?
Yeah, I guess only last year. Shit, as time flies, like I don't know, like it feels like shit. It feels longer ago.
Yeah, it was just 2018.
Fuck, that's crazy. So, anyways, one of the big things there was the PEI bridge, and like just going across something like that for me, and especially after working in the field, and in my field I work on a very specific part. I think that's how it is for most people, right? As in school, they always told us, right? Like, you might be the engineer of the brake pedal.
Yeah.
But, like, that's all you'll do. Like, for years and years, like, you'll figure out how to make it the best brake pedal there's ever been, right?
Yeah.
And, you'll learn all the different things about brake pedal. So I have my own specific component on the car. So I'm so in-depth in one little thing. And when you come up to something that's a structure or a building or even a system, a machine, and you see like how many different parts, and you're thinking, how many people took to make this? Like, I know one square foot of this could have taken one person a half a year just to develop, right? And I think it's a certain amount of an appreciation, and I think like like you could relate from music, right? When it doesn't matter if that's your favorite genre, right? For me, my favorite genre is automotive.
Sure, yeah.
Right? And for you, it doesn't matter if it's your favorite genre, but when someone who understands an instrument to another level, or when someone sings with such passion and can hit notes in such ranges that no one else can, you're like, fuck, you know what? I don't even care for what they're saying, but fuck, do they know how to say it? And it's the same way with I find for my field, right? Like, I definitely see cars, and honestly, the more I work in cars, the more I see them, and I'm like, yeah, okay, like, you know what I mean? I look at this shit fucking 5 days a week for fucking 42 and a half hours, never mind the fucking rest of the fucking time, discussing it. I actually like live with someone that I work with. We work on projects, so of course it's definitely hard to make that definitive line. So we talk about cars all day and night, never mind our personal interests that come up with new cars that aren't work related. So I can really appreciate when I see a mechanism or Actually, like right here where me and Jacob are sitting in my house, we're in my office, and we have a 3D printer right here. It's the kind of stuff that
And
like you can just
a
appreciate.
poster of the company you work for right behind us.
Oh yeah, with all the different cars we have stuff on. Like Jacob has another car poster above his head as well.
Yeah, it's and almost all of your friends from school really are in automotive of some sort and work in the field today. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's
Like being in automotive, like the money's in Detroit.
yeah,
Like that's how it is, right? Like that, unless you're gonna go, I guess overseas. Like as far as North America, like there's three, and those three are in Detroit. So I'd say like more than 50% of my class picked up and left for the States as soon as school ended.
and I do actually I haven't reached out to him yet, but I would like to sit down with the two of you on a podcast because I think that'd be really fun.
I guess to clarify, the two of us means myself and one of my more conservative friends.
Yeah.
That might be even more in the scale than I am. Lives in the States. Waiting to get his concealed carry. Already has, I'd say, quite the arsenal built up down there.
Yeah, he does.
Actually, he's become
He's competitive shooting now.
Competition shooting, and definitely one of my close hunting buddies for sure.
Yeah, I was actually just going back and forth with him on he was telling me about his concealed carry permit just a few days ago now, like maybe 2 or 3 days ago. I was talking to him about it.
Well, yeah, even to tie in, how you'd mentioned in the beginning, like, I do have my close friends are from a wide part of the spectrum, right? I have friends that are very, very liberal, and I have friends that are very conservative, and I find it's funny because I'll have like certain get-togethers, different groups that wouldn't have met get brought together, right? And yourself and a few other of them, who I'm talking about, right? I see you guys now starting to argue, or not argue, but debate on Facebook, right? And it's just funny to see, or brings that certain amount together. And I think everyone on that scale, when a lot of people don't have friends on the other side, right? Like as you get older, you have a smaller friend group. The people you're talking to are normally of the same ideas of you, and that's why you're friends for a lot of people. So when you now have a mutual friend, it's like, fuck, like I can't just tell this guy he's a fucking idiot. Like, fuck, I've met him, I've shook his hand, like, we've had a couple drinks, like, fuck, he's not a bad guy. Like, it really changes how that conversation works compared to just some stranger. Oh, you're so far right, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever.
Doesn't it make you almost I don't know the word, like disappointed though in a lot of our generation? Because like if you and I, like, dressed as we are right now, right? I'm still pretty much wearing my clothing from work with my hair all done. You're there with your hunting beard on and ready to go. Us walking down the street, most people would assume that like those two like are not friends together. And like I really like I feel really disappointed in our generation that I have had people reach out to me and say, like, because I'll present a conservative opinion on the podcast, right? Because that's what I like to do. Like, I like to say, okay, what are they saying about this? Gun control. Okay, they've said this, and this is what I agree with that they're saying, and this is what I disagree with. And I've had people reach out and be like, I've never heard that perspective before. And me, typically, especially if you're talking about guns, it's you and your friend down in Michigan there. I don't want to use his name because I don't know that he's about to agree to come on the podcast. I don't think he'd mind. I've actually said his name before on the podcast. But anyways, but I most of my opinion, at least, or my information on guns has come from the two of you, right? And I understand that some people who, you live, especially if you live in like a major city or whatever, your friends are mostly liberals, and you maybe never had a gun debate with someone. But it's like you go down the list, and there has to be someone. You have to have a friend that disagrees with you somewhere. And if you don't, I seriously think that like you need to expand your horizons, because you're going to have like that's why people have such a negative opinion on the world today. And like it has to be like the bubbles that exist on the internet, which I don't really want to get into too much, but you know what I'm referring to with
For sure.
the people you follow on Twitter and Instagram and whatnot are typically your friends who typically think the same way you do. If you're surrounded with the same idea and then you hear someone say something that you completely disagree with, and your instant reaction is negative, like anger or like a call to violence or something like that. The problem, I've always said, and I'm not saying this to you, but I've said this just in general, the problem probably isn't the person who's saying the crazy thing. The problem is likely you being isolated. And I really, really urge people that, you know, if you don't have a friend who owns guns, which we grew up in the same city, but I grew up outside of the city.
No, for sure.
Most of my friends outside of the city, and like gun cases in houses, not in my house, but in friends of mine, literally since I was young. Like I've been around it, right? Like I shot my first gun like when I was young. So to me, it's always just been a normal thing. I've always had friends who were pro-gun, right? My parents' friends and their kids were pro-gun. So I grew up with it. But I find it baffling that, that people aren't, like liberals, aren't exposed to someone like you who they could sit down with. You know what I mean? And have that discussion.
Oh, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you're comparing rural and urban. And, you know, some people talk about I was born in the wrong generation. You know, there's definitely been days I was born in the city, and I was meant to be born in the country. Like, that's where I belong. That's where I'm happy. But because I was born in the city, like, I got to see the other views, and like, I definitely, well, I like to think I understand them, right? And I get why those opinions are made, and I do see their side. And I really try and make an effort to do that, right? Because at the other side of that, you're just yelling ignorance. Right. If you don't see on the other side, right? It just becomes a big issue that way.
So I want to pivot because we've talked about politics for a long time. So if I can go back to automotive, you might not actually have an answer for this, but this is a question that I have never been asked and I will never be asked. But do you have a favorite car? And don't ask me back because I'll tell you whichever one gets me there.
It's just one of those things that it's like everything has like such a different purpose, right? Like there's so many different cars I like for so many different reasons, right? And like I can't picture myself like, you know, long term down the road, save up some money, whatever, having one car. And even growing up, like,
what would be the first car then? If like someone walked in today with like, what would buy you any car? $75 million that you had to spend on a car.
But see, that's
what
the
would
thing,
be the
right?
one that you bought?
If I was given that money,
you have to buy one. Stop adding parameters. Let's go.
I don't know what I'd buy. I honestly couldn't say. Like I would start looking, and honestly, like I don't normally. I'm not one to fantasize over like the super expensive cars. Like I like doing my own kind of stuff. I would definitely have muscle cars.
Would you ever buy one? Like if you had the means?
Oh, if I had the money, yeah. Like I'd get into it. But like, you know, I like to be a realistic person, right? And I'm not saying it wouldn't be possible. It would definitely have to grow slightly in priority for me. But like I see, for me to buy a car of that cost, like it would be either A, because I thought it was an investment and I thought it was a car that was going to go up in value. So now we're talking, you know, big money, right? In the hundreds of thousands. Like you can put it as a fraction of a million if you wish to do so. You know, if I was going to do that as an investment, but I'm a firm believer. It would be hard for me to have a show car, right? If you have a car, fucking drive it. Somebody spent the time to make it, drive it. So if I can't afford to drive it, like I'm not going to buy it. Yeah. And, you know, even like, you know, us growing up in high school, like I always had a couple cars at a time, right? And that's why I say if somebody gave me a chunk of money, I'd probably buy a couple cars. instead of just one.
But you drive all of them. You wouldn't be buying a car to sit
Oh
in a
yeah,
garage.
no, like
You're not going Jay Leno on it.
I currently have a truck. Right before that, I had a GTI. Before that, a Mercedes, then another truck, then a Jeep, then a truck, then a Jeep. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've been through how many different types of cars. Like, I like the change, right? And I drive a friend's car, and I'm like, fuck, like, I haven't driven a car in a while, right? And same thing happened when I had a car, right? Like, I would, I'd, like, drive a truck, and I'd be like, fuck, I haven't driven a truck in a while. And, like, cars are for different things. There's cars that are, like, straight line cars, right? Like, you know, I currently have a muscle car in storage. You know, I built an engine for and stuff, and that's a straight line car. Yeah, it has its purpose, right? Something like a front wheel drive, like GTI, a car I had.
Me too.
Very fun for like
mine was a little older.
For corners, right? Like it will fuck you. Put it in the corner. It's front wheel drive. It will pull you through.
Oh, you can hammer it.
Yeah, like no issue,
Beautiful
right?
ride too.
You go to a rear wheel drive car, and like like maybe you're not gonna take that corner as fast, but you're gonna, if you want to slide it, there's the option for you. Yes, I understand you can drift with this with an e-brake, but that's a whole other level. And like you know, not that I've ever drifted with an e-brake, but based on what I understand,
you haven't.
I guess like. Not like going down the road. Like, yeah, maybe in the winter fucking, but not like a proper...
I don't consider the winter drifting.
No, not like a dry road, just fucking cranking her and fucking going. No, I haven't done that.
You never in a parking lot with the GTI?
Well, here's the thing. So the GTI was the only front wheel drive car I ever owned.
That's what I'm saying. You never did with... Because I did with mine, like straight up.
No.
And I had the Jetta before that.
No. I don't know,
Jetta
right?
wasn't
like,
as responsive.
The GTI, 3 months... blew the engine.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So right when I started getting back in the swing of stick, like getting comfortable with the car, right? Brand new, you're always nervous, right? You work in to like build up, blow the engine. Okay, fuck. So I took the time, I fucking put in a new engine, fucking in my garage. So like I have a friend that's very good with computers, was able to get me Volkswagen instruction manual. And first step one is drop the engine out the bottom. And I'm like, okay, well, this fucking instruction booklet's fucking useless.
You can't lift the car.
No, I can't lift the car. I'm in the fucking garage. So fucking everything from the front. Anyways, sorry. Like, to make a long story short, 3 months, fucking fucked the clutch and sheared the flywheel right off the engine. So, okay, fuck. Back under there, pull the transmission out, new clutch. Another 3 months, thing just starts fucking shutting off on the fucking side of the road. And I said, fuck this shit, I'm going back to a truck. And I went back to another F-150.
Yes, you did. That GTI sat in our driveway we were living together then. Sat there for a couple of months while you were trying to sell it. You got rid of it though, didn't you sell it?
Yeah, I ended up actually in the end, like, I was, you know what, there's definitely things I could have done to sell a car. And, you know, being someone in the automotive field, people always ask me advice, what kind of car I should get. And one thing I've really pushed an opinion on is don't go on Kijiji and look how much a car costs. Because are you going to take the time to like prep it? Like, it's a lot of work. Like, people just think, oh, I'll just post it, people will come look. Like, no, it's not. Like, you got to make sure it works. People have questions, whatever. It's a whole endeavor. And if you're someone who wants to go through all that, shit, all the power to you. Go off that price. But you have to consider the value of that vehicle, what you can just give it away for. If you're willing to work to like sell it privately, okay, sure, that's money in your pocket. But the value of that vehicle is the wholesale value.
Yeah.
That there's a certain amount that goes to marketing. Even if the fucking dealership sells it, they got to pay the guy to sell it.
Everyone has bills to pay.
Exactly. Because you cannot sell them. Like, you're not going to get a bunch of used cars. And like, okay, I'm sure there are certain situations where used cars are sold on a whole. But even then, they're sold at the wholesale price. Like, if you want to sell them single by single, there has to be a marketing value.
Yeah, so I just want to jump back to that to be very clear about something. Because you skipped over this pretty quickly. Not only did you, it's a Buick, right, that you built the engine on first?
Oh, the Buick Century.
But then you fucking built, like, from the ground up. I actually saw this one all over the floor for the GTI. Like, you've completely built 2 engines, right?
No. So the GTI, I didn't I didn't build the engine.
Didn't you rebuild it though?
No. So
Okay.
I replaced a lot of the parts. Like I did like timing belt. I did like water pump, all that kind of stuff. That stuff's like, let's say at the 100 to 120 mark. Normally you have to do.
Okay.
On a small car, right? Like you get into bigger vehicles, completely different ball game. The Buick engine was down to like everything, right?
Yeah.
Like I just had like pieces of steel put together. Like that's the best way I can describe it. People were like, "Oh, you built the engine. Like what does that mean?" Like it was a piece of steel. Like there was nothing you could take off of it, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, that I did when I was very young, and like I spent so much money to put that engine together, and the amount of things I learned, like for one, I'll say one of like the biggest mistakes was I wanted to reuse the transmission, so I picked an engine that would bolt up. What I didn't realize is like when you get into old cars, there's some that are a dime a dozen and some that you have to order custom. Yeah. And I picked one of those ones you have to order custom. So it cost me a lot of money. It really did. But I have said for a long time now, every penny I spent on that car, even if it like gets stolen and I never see anything from it, was worth it because the amount it taught me got me to where I am today. Like I got my first job and moved up in my first job because I like knew how to work mechanically. Like look at a new problem that you don't understand and solve it, right? And I've moved along and I started like you probably remember in high school I used to leave halfway through the day, go to work. I'd work for the day, and when I finished university, like all that working was like, okay, like, yeah, like we'll give you a job and help get me a job. A lot of people do internship nowadays. Not my style. Like I am not a school fan at all. Like
you heard me last week. Never work a day for free.
Oh yeah, like
know your value.
Well, engineering interns get paid.
Fair enough.
And depending on where you work, some of them get paid quite well.
Yeah, fair enough.
Probably better than I get paid now, to be honest. But,
fair enough.
Shit, I totally lost track.
We were talking about, you were talking about how you got to where you were working through high school. You didn't go to your internship.
Even where I was now, when I started, I started as a technician. Within 6 months, like they promoted me to an engineering title, and it was a company like everyone like wanted to work at, right? They do some really cool projects, especially for automotive in Canada. But starting young and just like yeah, it cost me some money, but the amount of things you learn by just getting your hands dirty is phenomenal. And there's things that I learned on that car to this day that still help me.
Yeah.
Even with all the experience, I won't say all the experience, but even with the experience I've had now in the working world.
Yeah. So, what's your opinion on electric cars? Because that's what we're hearing a lot about nowadays. So what's your opinion on them?
So I have, I guess for a joking term, you could call bipolar disorder as far as electric cars, because there's the logical, thinking side of my brain, and there's, the fucking power side of my brain, right? And like, I love the smell of burning fucking oil, right? Like I bought a boat motor. I bought a 2-stroke 1960. Like when I start that thing up at, 6 o'clock in the morning, oh, like there's nothing better. And even building like, a combustion engine. Now, on the technical side, you can't argue with it. I not to get too technical, but to try and, I guess, put some technical insight on it. There's something people always talk about, which is a torque curve.
Yeah.
And like, this is where everyone you're like, oh, if it has more horsepower, it's faster. And that's not only always true, right? Because maybe power is just how fast your engine is turning and how much torque it's making.
Right.
So if it's spinning really fast, sure, like you can make a lot of power. But when you try and start going and when you switch a gear, it's not going to be spinning that fast. So we call this we like to look at the torque curve from a technical side, right? Because the torque is kind of like force, right? Like force in a rotational direction, if you will.
Yep.
So a torque curve on a typical combustion engine. It starts at 0, like anything, and it kind of goes up, let's say, just for example, maybe pretty steep, but on an angle, let's say 45 degrees, maybe a little steeper than that, but, maybe 50 degrees, if you can picture that, levels out to some sort of peak and starts to droop down. And that's because as the engine's spinning faster, like there's power taken up by that, right? So you can't produce as much force, right?
Yeah, you can only produce so much force.
Right. And normally, like, you'll have your peak torque, and slightly after your peak torque, you'll have your peak horsepower, because those extra RPM, like I said before, torque times RPM, you get your horsepower. And that's why you get different, like, speeds. Like, cars can be way faster, especially around the track. When you're coming to a corner, you got to slow down and then accelerate. Like, that's where those low RPM, those torque count.
Yeah.
As the expression goes, there's no replacement for displacement, right? Like, I love my V8s. When I bought my truck, like, I didn't even test drive one. I knew I was buying a Ford. I'd already owned the previous 2 generation F-150s. I picked up the phone. I called every dealership. I said, I want a towing package. I want 4x4, and I want a V8. One guy, I went in, tries to sell me a V6. I'm like, I want a V8. Keeps showing me V6s. I walked right out the door. I called the manager, and he's like, will you come back? I'm like, no, I just want you to know, like,
This
what an idiot.
yeah.
What an idiot this fucking guy is.
Yeah. I remember.
Anyways,
you were pissed.
I was fucking rattled, and I think that's what also, like, pushed me to yeah, I'm fucking buying a truck. Like, this guy's not fucking telling me. So, anyways, that is what it looks like on the combustion side.
Yeah.
Now electric, less my preference, but like I said, you can't argue with it. So the torque curve on an electric motor looks like a box. It just goes straight up, and it's a perfectly flat line across. So that means the amount of force turning your wheels is the same when you start as to when you're going at top speed.
Right.
Whereas on a combustion engine, that force has to build up over time.
Yeah.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, why the fuck do we ever have a combustion engine? Well, that's because it's a flat line, it's somewhere in the middle. Typically, unless you get super big. So if you want to go super fast, you always need a combustion engine. If you want to start fast, you need an electric motor. And that's why you've seen, like, these, like, really high-end car manufacturers are coming out with these hybrids. And you think, hybrid, why are they trying to save money on, like, my Porsche or my Ferrari? And it's like, no, because the electric motor is going to get you off the line, and then once you're going, the gas motor is what's really going to carry you. So maybe it's like the logical side, but I can't discredit it. It is the way of the. I understand it's the way of the future, and maybe I'm a bit of a conspiracist, but I think, like, electric motor and electric vehicle technology has definitely been hindered. The first electric vehicle, most people probably won't realize this, was made. And don't quote me quite on the year, but probably plus or minus 5 years. I think it was about 1918. By Ferdinand Porsche, which later created the company that would be Porsche, or I guess it was Ferdinand Porsche. Right, exactly, right. That later created the company Porsche. I can't remember exactly, but when he created the electric motor, he was working under somebody else, and it was. I can't remember who it was, but it was somebody whose name is now a car company. Maybe it was Mercedes, or maybe it was Maybach, or one of those kind of German companies. Yep. Exactly. So, like, we've had this technology like 20. I say 18. I think like about 100 years ago, right? Like, we've had this technology for 100 years, and only now it's starting to become practical. Like, it's just something hard for me to believe. You know what I mean?
I think it's actually really simple, though, because really, if you want to look at mass car production, you have to look at Henry Ford, right? I mean, he created automation. And the reason that like gasoline cars took off was because of all of the oil companies in the US that were taking off at the same time. So they were funding him. Right. So if the largest car company in the world is funded by an oil company, well, much like what we're seeing right now, actually, where you have to look at how, although they are completely separate entities, right? SpaceX and Tesla really do have to be looked at almost as one and the same from a development and a creative perspective. And right now, SpaceX is funded by space agencies who need batteries, right? And what is Tesla the best at doing in the world?
Oh, for
creating
sure.
batteries. So it's the same thing. It's 100 years later, and now instead of oil companies funding car companies, now suddenly battery companies are funding. They're not funding the company itself, but they're funding the creators, right? They're funding the guy, really, in Elon Musk, who is creating Teslas, right? And they need to buy Tesla batteries. So to me, it's actually far simpler than anything other than Henry Ford was funded by oil companies. All the European car manufacturers had to keep up with Ford, so they had to do what Ford was doing. And that's why the electric engine probably should have taken off. Like, if you think about it logically,
100 years. Do you know what we've done in 100 years? Like, just think of, like, let's take a moment. 100 years.
1919.
People were riding, like, most people are riding by horse.
Yep.
This is a time we're talking about. And I definitely understand what you're saying. I get it. Like, we had to wait for the battery technology. But what I'm saying, my point is, and I agree, we were waiting on the battery technology.
Yeah.
Is that, like, there was no funding put to that battery technology.
Right.
And the proof to me is that the fact how much they're hiding is that building a car is not a small feat. It's not. It seems like, oh yeah, like, let's slap it together, but to make it so that it's mass production, like building one car, sure, even that's a feat, but you can do it. But making it so I can mass produce this and make some sort of profit, that companies are like, holy fuck, this motor and battery technology is so fucking simple.
Yeah.
And it's already fucking ready, and no one's doing it. We are going to take the undertaking of trying to build a whole vehicle, drivetrain, suspension, bodywork, like interiors. They want to build this whole vehicle because they're like, no one is doing this motor. If they didn't understand the motor or the battery, there's no way they could take on this undertaking.
Right.
How would they ever compete with Ford or Mercedes even? Or if you want to go to the JDM market like Toyota, how are they going to compete?
Right.
Because they're not trying.
Right.
That's the only way they can enter this market, and they're using this technology that people have just been told is like, it's not ready.
Isn't it crazy how could you flip the light on too? It's getting hard to see in here. Thank you. Isn't it crazy how all it took, and I mean, we're not there yet. Don't get me wrong. Like, I understand that electric cars, like, you and I could, if we wanted to, leave today and buy an electric car.
Oh yeah.
It would cost us 100,000 Canadian dollars to get. I mean, let's be honest. If I'm buying an electric car, it's about to be a Tesla. I'm not buying no fucking Prius. Sorry, guy in the States who I know has a Prius who we were talking about.
Yeah, just to clear that up for everyone. So my really conservative friend that likes hunting drives a Prius. If I may, if I can go into a short story. So
Go ahead.
Like, we very much enjoy duck hunting, right? So he has, like, I guess an open top 2-man canoe or kayak, whatever you want to call it, like, double hull kind of thing. I apologize, that might be too much boat lingo for a lot of people, but anyways, it looks like a fucking big platform that you just, like, in canoe shape. And he has it strapped to the top of the Prius, and it's December 23rd because he's coming home from Christmas. And he pulls up to the border, come back in the Canada, and she looks at the car, and she sees the Prius, and she sees the boat all camoed up, and she's like, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm going hunting." She's like, "Aren't the lakes frozen?" He's like, "Well, that's why it's a 2-seater. We break the ice in front of the boat." And she might have thought he was joking or might not, but I'll tell you, we've gone hunting where, yeah, one guy's at the back steering and one guy breaks the ice in front of the boat. Like, and just the Prius just makes it fucking perfect. Like,
fuck. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's hilarious. Like, the two of you are like super ultra redneck, and just picturing the two of you rolling down the street in a Prius with a hunting boat on the back. It's fucking beautiful.
So
that picture he sent us earlier, like,
yeah,
that was fucking hilarious.
Well, and his side is like, the numbers. I can't argue with the numbers, right? And like,
I think in all like different types of engineers, that logical side pokes its head in different ways, right?
Right.
There's like, I would never consider myself OCD. Like, I definitely keep the messiest work area at work. Like, I keep my room a mess, but there's certain things that have to be a certain way for me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even tell you one off the top of my head. Maybe I don't know myself as well as I should, but like there, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things where I'm like, okay, like that's fucking wrong.
Oh, I know
like...
what you mean. I could start naming some things, but I'll hide the better side of you from the general public. So about Tesla though, how isn't it crazy that, I mean, it would have happened anyways. I think we have to openly admit that the electric car would have become a thing no matter what. But the fact that this crazy billionaire was suddenly like, he develops a PayPal essentially, sells it, has a ton of money, and decides, I'm going to build electric cars on the scale of like the Model T, the first Ford car that was produced, and I'm going to send fucking rockets into space. Like, what a fucking time to be alive, man. Like, for us as viewers, you know what I mean? Just to see it happen, that all of a sudden, Toyota's Prius, right? So you have Toyota, who's, as far as Japan is concerned, pretty heavily involved in electric cars. And then you have Tesla in the US. Chevy kind of has been following behind. Now you see Ford kind of following behind. But really, you have, if you're buying an electric car, it's most likely made by Toyota or Tesla nowadays. Which one would you go with? If you could afford either, like take affordability off the table.
So I won't comment on any mainstream OEM electric progress.
Okay.
But from like aspects of like Tesla, and like how like, we're saying like some billionaire, right? Like same to my point, right? Is like, fuck, people had to go out on their own and be like, this is so easy. Like, not to be ignorant, or I don't know which one was harder, putting the rocket in space or making a mass-produced vehicle. When I say mass-produced vehicle, I'm not talking the Model S. Model S is, I would say, on the slightly lower end of mass-produced, right? It's more of a luxury vehicle.
I agree.
Model 3...
That's what I was going to bring up, was the
is
Tesla
their
Model
mass
3.
production. We all like have heard and whatever have been what happened. I think it was at one time, like they just went through firings. They had to get rid of hundreds of people at a time.
They thought
the
company was going down. And like not even that long ago. You're talking like 2010, 2011, Tesla was like, everyone was selling shares.
And you know what? I think it was more than just going down. It's like, we need a cleanse. So I think everyone can admit, in every workplace I've ever worked in, not even talking about my current one, in my current one probably a little better, because it is definitely a very, I'd say somewhat competitive, very demanding environment. And like to even get in there is difficult. I would say like I'm one of the few people that actually didn't do an internship. Normally they put them through the ringer on the internship, and then like if they do well, they hire them. So I actually started in the manufacturing plant and like worked my way up. So like I didn't have to go through like all the ringer, but I put in my work in other ways, right? And where my expertise is, in like the hands-on, like mechanical, understanding how the system works.
Right. Okay, fair enough. You don't want to comment on which car you'd prefer one over another. Fair enough.
So don't get me wrong, like electric, because there's lots of up and coming. You know what I mean? Like, I cannot say one way or the other.
Fair enough.
But, hey, that's the way of the industry, right? Like, that's what keeps things interesting, and that's what, like, keeps people showing up to release days, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, they just... Well, this is actually... Talking about car release days, because I find this super interesting. I follow a fair number of like, car people on Instagram and whatnot, like... You know me, like I am import all the way, like German or JDM. That's it. I will, unless it's a Tesla, because I keep saying like my next car. I probably right now I drive a Lancer Black Edition, the last one officially made, number 193 of 400.
I saw a Black Edition. I'm like, holy fuck, is this Jacob? I think it's the first one I've seen that wasn't yours.
In this area.
Yeah.
I know where. I literally know where they all are. There's like one in the city that I live in. There's one that on the main road off the highway here, like towards the highway. You can see it parked right in there. I drive to work with. We all work at the same time. We all start work at 7.
Oh yeah, no, I get it.
We squat up on the highway. But yeah. So right now I'm driving a Japanese car. Actually, this is my first Japanese. I've only owned German cars until this one. Yeah, because I've owned Volkswagen and the one Mercedes. And my next car will be a Tesla. But I have no idea where I'm going with this. I think I was trying to get somewhere. But what I want to pivot to from talking about like which one is better is if you're looking outside of the automotive industry, what industry, and this doesn't have to be for engineering, but what has the most interest for you? Like, what do you find yourself looking at the most other than automotive?
So I wouldn't even say it's down to like a specific field, right? Like I definitely like follow engineering pages and engineering news. And it's just like, what are like the advancements? And once you start looking into the science, like the same is kind of consistent across the board, right? So
yeah.
For example, we're starting to look into like a new generation of steels. As like I'm sure most people don't know, we're actually in what we call like generation 2 steel.
Okay.
And we're like some industries have already adopted it.
Yep.
And like generation 3 steels, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? And like that's like holy fuck, right? Like people just think like, yeah, it's a piece of metal, but like we're like making that piece of metal better,
right? Yeah.
better, right? Like somehow, like we're making those bare bones. And I'm not a metallurgist or a chemist or any of those things. And I like, you know, I definitely try and refer to the experts when it comes to those kinds of decisions, right? When they have to be made. But yeah, like just different advancements. Like, you know, I always grew up watching how it's made, like, you know, and now like, you know, most of the things where it's like, how it's made isn't that interesting anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've watched so much of it. I've worked on, I've studied it. I can guess like
you can put together how it's
90% of the time, right? 9 out of 10. I think that's a more than reasonable guess. But when it's like, I don't care how the whole part is made. It's like, how did you make that little piece?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. What's the details? I get it. I know how you put the car together. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's like, fuck, how did you get it to do this? You know what I mean? How did you get it to, you know, how did you get it to like keep the same distance?
Yeah.
You know, for example, in like autonomous driving, right? Those are the things that interest me. And I know we said outside of automotive.
But no, autonomous driving is actually, it's something that fascinates me. Like, I mean, it's more coding really than anything that it's coming down to. But like currently, there's really two methods. We use either infrared sensors or actual Tesla's using visual sensors is what they're working on. It seems like most other companies are using it's not infrared. It's in the blue light spectrum, isn't it?
So honestly, I'm not very up to date on the hardware of the self-driving cars because that's not where the limits are.
No, it's not. But
we have the mechanical devices to know where things are.
Right, but not affordably. There's only 2 right now that we can produce affordably.
Sorry, let me explain. So the hardware is not what's costing the money. It's the software.
Yeah.
We can know everything around the car. That hardware system exists. Yes, they're working on better ways. Yes, they're working on ways that yes, maybe we're missing small pieces of information, but the holdback is the software. And they actually have it in like in automotive, there's a system, right? Like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Not my wheelhouse, as they say. But if I remember correctly, we're at like a level 2+, which is like the Tesla.
Yep.
The one we were talking about, where it can drive by itself.
But
on
level
the
4,
highway.
you mean, is like the end, or level 1 is the end? The end goal.
Oh no, so level 1, okay, so don't quote me on this, but
Okay.
a general idea, right? So level 1 is like cruise control.
Oh, I see. And then you're going up to 4, which is complete
So
automation.
level 2 is like cruise control, and now it's gonna warn you when you're getting
lane
out of the
assistance
lanes.
and whatever.
Right. Level 3 is now when you're now you don't have to pay attention on the highway. You can sit there, you can sleep, you can be shittered, doesn't fucking matter. Level 4, you can be shittered or fucking not pay attention for anywhere. So
Right.
highway is separated from city.
Yes.
Completely different scenario. To follow the car in front of you and like apply the brakes as needed is one thing, than like people coming across, all this different thing. So we're currently at about a 2+ level.
Okay.
As they would call. Like what's in production and saleable today, right?
Yeah.
And that's like where you don't have to hold the wheel, but you need to be fucking paying attention.
Yeah. You still do. There are still sensors on the wheels and everything.
Right. And this is what Tesla got a lot of trouble in, because Tesla had a level 2 system and advertised that they had a level 3 system.
Yeah, they advertised it as highway drive.
Right.
Automated
So you
highway
can not
driving.
pay attention for 5 seconds, but you have to fucking pay attention.
Right.
And there's so much like, you know what? They might have paid their fines and stuff, but it was still worth it for them, I bet you. Because when you ask the average person who has the best self-driving car,
It's Tesla.
Tesla. I honestly, like, I don't follow it like that closely to know where everyone's at. If I had to take an educated guess, I would say it's not Tesla right now.
Yeah.
They don't have the funds. They don't have the, the means to have the best. There's companies, that have been making this kind of software for years and have already been like starting to develop this. And they know it's not ready. And because they're so big, they're not willing to take that kind of risk. Right? Because you're a company making, and I really try not to use any names, but you're one of the mainstream OEMs. Anything you're expecting to see down the road when you go out.
Yeah.
Like for you to take a risk and try and pretend you have like something that can handle itself when it can't, that's a huge risk. For Tesla, they're trying to get their foot in the door. This every day for them is a do or die situation. Like I followed their stock for a bit and I've debated because it fluctuates a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And whether you think it's going to go up or you think it's going to go down, there's a potential to make money there. And I know it's maybe kind of controversial. I work in the automotive, like, you know what I mean? But I still haven't made my mind up.
Nonetheless,
I'll
you're
say,
still an executive. You could buy into.
I know I haven't done it yet. Like, part of it's personal, part of it's like what the legality is, but like, you know what I mean? I don't know if I want to get mixed up in it. Like, leave my day job, right? And don't consume my whole life in it, right? If the automotive sector, from the other side too, if the automotive sector goes to shit
and all your
right?
money's invested.
Oh
where
yeah,
you
in
work.
automotive, so I lose my job and all my stocks drop.
Yeah.
Drop is probably not like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I think autonomous is really interesting, and I definitely foresee like and I guess I slightly fear the day where like no one's gonna drive, right? And it's something I really enjoy. Like I remember my 16th birthday standing outside the driver's license office, like waiting for them to unlock the doors.
You want to hear the saddest story?
My driver's license.
I turned 16 on a Sunday.
Oh.
I couldn't get my license on my birthday. I got my license on June 7th, the day after my birthday.
Well, my birthday is typically a holiday.
Yes, it is.
So like
Were they open?
oh yeah, they were open. I guess it's a holiday
The
for
day-
some people, but not others.
Yeah, it's
around Christmas time,
Yeah.
right? So it normally gets brought into the break.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, that's something that fears me. And I guess it's the same as the electric car, right? Like, I definitely have my love for combustion, but I get it. I get it, right? But, I guess from the other side, all these batteries take a certain amount of emissions to be made. And I think it's something that's never really considered by the general public. Most battery electric cars use more emissions to be made than like a combustion engine could ever produce if it ran to like 500,000
Yes.
kilometers.
Yeah.
So, as I would say, it's a bit of a fucking circle jerk, like, to put it bluntly. Like,
I don't disagree, but I think it also can't be understated that in the future, that will be significantly decreased. The emissions required to create a battery. But like battery technology fucking sucks. You know what I mean? Like it really does. In theoretically, what we could do with a battery is far greater than what we actually do with a battery.
So I think no matter where it is at now, and I know everyone think electrical storage, and not to get too technical, technically a battery is chemical storage. It's not electric storage, but trying to store readily available electricity, and everyone wants that as the answer. But like I think there's other options.
I don't disagree with you. I think we're stuck on
like a
batteries
hydrogen
for now.
engine.
It's been tried though. Right? With like water as your only emission. They've tried.
Right.
But no one's been able to produce a safe enough, consistent enough. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it has been invested in. They've tried to do it, and it hasn't been safe and consistent.
So something I've always thought about when it comes to all this stuff, it's all about efficiency, right?
Yeah.
Chrysler actually made a turbine engine car, which I think is the coolest fucking thing. Because not only do you have like a fucking like jet turbine in your car, like it's way more fucking efficient than like, okay, maybe not that one back in the day, but using the correct technology, it's way more fucking efficient than any internal combustion engine would ever be, like a 4-stroke or even a 2-stroke cycle.
Yeah.
Like it's just mind blowing, and like I totally think all the time, like, fuck, why don't we just have like an electric hybrid where it fucking has like a little turbine that like powers the engine. And I guess to go in a little detail with that, you can't just the trouble with putting a turbine just on a car is a turbine spins at a very specific speed. If you go slower or faster, it's complete garbage.
Yeah.
So that's why that's the power of an internal combustion engine. But when you're making a generator, you can design your turbine and your generator to be paired to each other, and you don't have to have it to be able to operate on the multiple ranges.
Right. Because you can rely on the battery that's being charged by the turbine until you pivot the power at whatever speed.
And granted,
your turbine runs.
Even the internal combustion engine, there's a very specific speed and load where you're getting the most energy out for the energy you're putting in. And anywhere you go away from that, you're losing efficiency, right? And in most cars, it's normally set around like 80 kilometers an hour. There's definitely a wide range depending on the car. If you have a performance, forget about that.
Yep.
But like, yeah, you people, they know you're going to be going 100, maybe 120. You're going to have to drive 50. Okay, 80, about in the middle. We're going to get like the maximum efficiency.
Right. Interesting. Now, another pivot in science questions for you. Something that I know from our own personal conversations you don't follow as closely, but it was a big news story today, so I want to bring it up.
Okay.
You may have seen this. It was a very big news story today, but I know you had a busy day. So news broke around 10 a.m. NASA published the news that last night it was confirmed by their telescopes. September 10th, so 3 days ago, we're recording on the 13th, a Russian amateur astronomer or semi-professional astronomer, I think, he actually spotted an object that NASA confirmed last night. They think it's the second interstellar object we've ever seen, and it's the first one that we've actually seen on approach. So a few years ago, you might remember in 2015, Oumuamua came through. That's what we named it because it was found by the telescope in Hawaii, or one of the telescopes in Hawaii. And so an interstellar object, if you're unaware listening, essentially it's rock debris of some sort. It's not aliens. For anyone who's conspiratorially minded, it is absolutely not intelligent, but it is rock debris that originates from outside our solar system. So it comes through at such a high rate of speed. Normally we can't find it. We don't see it coming, but we can, as we did in 2015, we were able to see it leaving. This one, it was coming in at the right angle from the sun, not a 90-degree angle, but the correct angle where we could actually see it. So we were able to see it. And now for the next week or so, 10 days, it's going to be behind the sun, so we can't analyze it. But then it'll pass from the other side of the sun, and we're actually going to be able to see it. So I'm not sure if you saw that news story. I don't remember. They named it after the astronomer who found it. I want to say like Domitrov or something like that. Q4, because it was found in the fourth quarter of the year. Astronomers are not the most, they don't give things the most interesting names. But my question for you really is, do you follow any sort of spatial science, astronomy, maybe astrology, maybe your, what's your name, girl? What's your sign? I don't know. But do you follow anything like that? And
so no,
are you interested?
I think I definitely I think about it from time to time, and I definitely have listened to some of Neil deGrasse Tyson's stuff, and I don't think
are we allowed to talk about Neil deGrasse Tyson? He touched a girl's shoulder at him.
I think we can move on from that.
Okay, fair enough. I'll let you continue.
But I think it just that one too comes down to being good at your trade, right? If you're a good speaker, people are going to want to listen even if they don't care what you're saying, right? If you're a master of your trade, people appreciate that, and I think that's why I can listen to him. But I always have to cap it off at a certain point when I start thinking about that stuff, because it's like it's not in my immediate reality. Like there's so many other things for me to figure out that are going to happen like in the immediate future.
So is it for you more the fact that, like, just being fully real about it, in your lifetime, even if there's something out there statistically, you're not going to find out before you die? Like, people likely will walk on Mars in your lifetime, but no one's going to be standing, no one will probably ever stand on Mercury, and beyond Mars, literally Pluto, other than some moons maybe, but there's no significant objects to stand on the other side of Mars, because it's gas and you'll just crush yourself or fly right through it. So is it sort of like that, or is there like another reason for you?
Oh no, like is it a possibility? Sure, like it's definitely a possibility, but I don't see value. Like I don't see what I can do to prepare for that. Right? Like there's definitely some thought, like is something out there, but at every like quick sign, like that's not adding value, right? Like if life came here and be like, well, I watched when this inanimate object flew by. Did you know that object? Okay, like, yeah. So me like following all of that is like already useless. Like it's not building up. It's not adding intelligence. It's not going to be helpful if that happens. Right. And I think, and I don't want to say to like, it's not an absolute. It definitely, there's things we can study. I think we should be studying it. Not to get political again, but I would definitely support a space force.
I would
as
too.
As crazy as it sounds,
agree.
as so crazy as everyone wanted to make a joke out of it.
I think it's the smartest thing he's done as president.
But
actually.
like, yeah, I think there's going to be a time in the future where people are going to look back and they're going to say, "Fuck, you know what? I didn't like him, but he was looking ahead." And
yeah. When it comes to that, or whoever was around him was looking ahead.
Yeah,
but
whoever
I'll give
said
him the
it,
credit because
like,
he's
pushing
got
it through. Yeah, like
patch.
he did it. But
yep.
I don't know. Like I think it's like daydreaming, right? And like I'm a very practical and logical person, and like I don't like to wrap myself up in those kinds of things. It's the same with the expensive cars, right? Like it's a possibility, sure, it could happen, but is it really realistic? What's the probability of that happening? It's very small. Like there's things we would even consider less likely that are probably more probable to happen. Like the example everyone used, right? You're more likely to get struck by lightning than win the lottery.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like
almost twice.
You wouldn't think about it like that. You're like, I hear people winning the lottery every day. I don't hear people getting struck by lightning, because that's what you're shown, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the way that I look at it is, I think that when we're talking about space, there is one glaring thing that nobody talks about that is the reason I actually think that space, and this is why I completely agree with Space Force. I think we should have significantly more funding into space research, specifically because there are two existential threats to human life realistically. Perhaps you could go with three. So the third one that I just added to that short list is some sort of like a virus or a biohazard of some sort. But I think as a species, it's very unlikely that a virus shows up we can't deal with. I actually do believe that, at least from this planet. If a comet lands somewhere with something that's not DNA that kills us all, okay,
yeah, because
sure.
even if it's not by prevention, like even if it's not we can't figure out a cure. We understand quarantine, and I think we understand very well how things are transmitted, right? Like we're past
humans
the
aren't
point
going to die off completely.
Exactly. Like we understand.
We'll hide
radiation.
underground if we need to. Yeah,
unless there's like crazy other levels of something else we can't measure.
That's what I'm
saying. It's possible for sure, but like we understand quite a bit, and I guess. Obviously, I'm going to say that because we can already understand shit we can't see.
Right.
And past that point, like, it's endless possibilities of what else is out there, right? Like,
yeah.
If you want to get into, like, a space-time continuum, like, oh, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, oh, like, it's so vast. And, like, some people listening may think, like, space-time continuum. Like, this sounds like a sci-fi, like movie, but like Albert Einstein is someone who actively like studied the space-time continuum, right? Like you're moving at like, you know, you're trending at a certain speed, and if you're moving faster in time, you're moving slower in space.
Yeah.
Sorry, a bit of a tangent for sure, but like
you're right. And so I think the other two, so a biohazard I would list as an existential risk for the human race, and by existential I mean things that could literally wipe us out. But I think there's only two things that we should actually worry about. One is nuclear arms, which is something that I actually think you can debate Iran, but other than that, I think we have a very firm grip, and it's not going to be the end of the human race. And I even with around Iran, I'm actually somewhat comfortable with the situation, that I think everyone knows what it means. I don't think there's anyone. I think there are some dumb people. I don't think there's anyone dumb enough to pull the trigger.
So even if that happens, I think we can all agree we definitely don't know what the best military technology is right now. And I'm sure there is a plan in place.
I agree
if something
completely.
were to happen, and I'm sure there's a lot of money being spent on it. And we had the the Americans went through the Cuban Missile Crisis quite a long time ago. So we've been looking in, well, how do we stop a nuclear missile for probably a good 60, 70 years now? So I bet you there's some pretty clever ways. Like there's definitely some monitoring going on, right? Like, you know, not to speculate, but I can think of some ways, right? There's certain temperatures you would have to reach. You know, for example, people might say, oh, well, you can hide them. No, there's like certain temperatures you'd have to reach. And I'm sure, you know, there's already gone through phases of preventative methods that, you know, countries have already like fooled, right? Because then they caught up and now that way's useless, right? And ways that were never even tried, right? Like it's always changing. So I don't know, like this is not on any merit or anything like research or factual thing I said, but I have the feeling like I think the US has the technology to not take a nuclear missile if it was launched at them.
I think Russia does too, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think between the two nations, China's getting to the point where they might be confident in their defense mechanisms as well. And to me, the way that I see it is you have three actual superpowers. You have Iran, who think they're a superpower. And the three actual superpowers, although, yeah, two of them are kind of friendly with Iran. The U.S. is obviously not. But I don't see Russia or China being okay with Iran nuking or attempting to nuke, because the amount of weapons they would need to actually like deal with the US in the snap of a finger. Like, we are quite literally 30 years from that, right? And they're not just going to send one bomb to Washington, because then they'll get, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
The amount, even if they had the perfect system that could launch a rocket and take every missile out of the world, they can't afford enough rockets for the amount of missiles the U.S. have.
And
we talk about Russia being a competitor, and I understand they're huge. Like, it's a huge country, and I think some people underestimate that at times. But when you look at how much the U.S. spends, and I get it, a lot of it's disposable. They have a lot of people just,
building,
no value added, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're standing monitoring, but they're not progressing the military. The U.S. is definitely spending the most money figuring out the newest technology.
There's no question.
And in a year, that makes a difference. Never mind, they've been doing this, I would confidently say, since World War II. Spending more than anyone else, if not before.
No, World War II. It was World War II.
But that's definitely World War II. Like, they're spending the most money. Like, they're making the most advancements. Like, they have shit we could only dream about.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I would say even the poorer countries have shit we could probably only, maybe not poor, but you know what I mean? Like, top 10 all have shit we could only dream about.
And another important thing to add to that is that the way the U.S. defends everyone, every technology everyone else in NATO comes up with gets filtered back to the United States. So not only do they have all of their own research that they, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they share with like certain bits with certain partners, but then they get all of the research from everyone else. Or at least, like Canada, England, France, Spain, Germany. You have to pool all of what all of them are spending and consider that as research. You know what I mean? It's quite. So either way, nuclear missiles are off my table for what I actually think. And who knows? Maybe we're about to get blasted with the the first wave of material from a bomb during this podcast, but I'm quite confident that that's not going to happen. So for me, the real existential risk to human life is something that we actually currently theoretically can deal with, but we don't have the physical capabilities, and it's asteroid impact. And this is something that I've actually contemplated. I might go to a town hall with for the conservative and the liberal MPs and actually bring this up, is that there really is only one existential risk to our existence. And it's like to the point that only a few weeks ago, an object large enough, it was 117 meters across. So if it had impacted any surface area, the crater would have, and it was traveling about 9.3 kilometers a second, which is not super fast for a spatial object. But that collision with Earth would have created a crater that was roughly 2.5 to 3 kilometers across, and it would have destroyed, like literally killed life for about a 10 kilometer radius. Now, I understand the odds of it hitting an actual community are relatively low, but if that makes contact with the ocean, you're talking about triggering tsunamis before any of our sensors are set up to do it. All of our sensors are at the bottom of the ocean, not the top. So all of a sudden, cut your tsunami warning time by like literally 2/3, right? So if that hits 100 miles off the coast of California, Japan, Africa, the UK, like the East Coast does not have tsunami warning systems because the tectonic plates are actually separating on the East Coast of North America and the West Coast of Europe. They don't have tsunami warning technology. All of a sudden, you have this. It was an asteroid. It was an iron rock. Hits the ocean at that speed. You're talking about killing easily 10, 20, 30 million. Like, what if that hit New York? Like, what if that went over Manhattan?
Yeah.
Like, that's the sort of thing to me that it's like Space Force makes sense because we need to fund that sort of defensive technology.
Like, I think it's already there.
Theoretically, it is, but not practically.
And I think like when people find things, Like when it's like, oh, this like astronomer and wherever. I don't believe he was the first person to find it. He's the first person to open his mouth, but he wasn't the first person to find it.
I think you greatly underestimate what's happening right now with in astronomy. I think you greatly underestimate the capabilities, because right now, you have to only look at politics, because that's what this comes down to. And it is set up for interhuman politics. They are worried about what's going on in Iran, what's going on in Russia, the trade wars with China, making sure that no war breaks out again in Syria. That's what they're spending money on. NASA gets nothing, right? The Russian Space Agency gets relatively nothing. The European Space Agency gets nothing. They have to pool their funds. Like Russia, their space agency, the cosmonaut CSKA or something like that, has to work with NASA and pool funds together to launch people to space, right?
I guess where I may have misspoke is, like, I don't believe that's covered under like the space agency. Like, I think it's a very similar system that would take care of a nuclear missile.
But you have to understand that we know that there is funding to defend against nuclear missiles, right? Like Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote a book last year on the job of astrophysicists in national defense, and he has I think 3 whole chapters on what we cannot do. 2 of those chapters are entirely focused on asteroid impact, because like his estimate is 20 years. So if we saw something coming, we would have, right now, it would take us 20 years to develop the technology and fly it to something, like assuming that it's about a 3 to 4 year flight away, and nudge it far enough away for it to not
just slightly
kill us.
off course, right? It doesn't need to like blast it to pieces.
You can't blast it to pieces.
You just got to knock it off course,
right,
for sure.
Right. So we're actually doing a test right now. There are 2 asteroids that orbit each other. One, it's technically a satellite of an asteroid. And in 2024, we are between the European Space Agency, Canadian, and NASA. We're launching a mission to land on the side of the satellite that's orbiting. It's a rock, but we call it a satellite. It's actually orbiting an asteroid, and we're going to see if we can land on it and move it away. We're going to test it. And this object is roughly 13 kilometers in size, is the main asteroid.
Yeah.
And the small object is something like 500 meters across. And we aren't certain that we have the technology to push it. We know we have the technology theoretically, but we have to try to figure out how to land on it, and then have jet propulsion systems engaged to fly it the direction they want it to go. And we don't know if we can do it. Like, to me, it's terrifying. Like, it's actually scary that there's nothing we can do. Like, if this object that they found was actually the one that we just saw right now, right? It's going to pass by the sun, and it should be in our solar system for about maybe about 2.5, 3 weeks or so, like 21 days you're talking about. Literally, like, if that was coming for us, sorry. What we would know is how long, when it's going to impact us, roughly where on Earth it's going to hit, and that's it. We could tell you like a window of like 30 to 45 minutes that it's going to hit us around this time, around this area, this side of the Earth.
So I'd start by saying, like, I definitely don't worry about dying in, like, I guess a massive explosion if a tsunami comes. Like, it's so be it, right? Like, if I make it through and it's a disaster, like, I don't know, like, it seems like an experience, and maybe that's a very like privileged thing to me.
An experience.
Maybe it seems like a privileged thing to say, but
that's
like
golden.
For example, I don't fear, like, I guess shit hits the fan situation. I wouldn't consider myself a prepper, but it's not something I worry about. Like, not just in like that whether it's gonna happen or not, but even in the situation that it did happen, right? Like, you work your way through. Like, it's just like a different way to live your life, right? Like,
yeah.
I guess, you know, an example I always use is like happiness is a certain scale. Right? Like, It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. Like, your maximum happiness level is a certain level. And sure, maybe certain things in your life or the way your life is set up makes you hit that that maximum euphoric feeling, if you will, more often. Fuck, I totally lost it.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break and we'll probably come back after that. Now you guys can see why I wanted Adam to be on this podcast so badly. He is not only hilarious in his own way, as you can see by how he's dramatically ended every section we've done, but he's super knowledgeable about what he did. So hopefully you enjoyed that. There's about another like half hour left or so. So I hope you guys enjoy that as much as we did. And I'd just like to remind you at this point, first of all, thank you so much for sticking through it with us. And please, since you seem to at least be somewhat a fan of the show, subscribe on whatever you're using and share us with your friends and family wherever that may be, either in person, tell people about it, or over on social media. If you want to talk to us about it, you can feel free to reach out to us anytime on social media, or you can hit me up over at www.laughtolearnpodcast.com. Just use the contact page. All my social media links are down below. And yeah, let's get back into the last part of it, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Okay. We're back from our last impromptu break. Is that your last break, Adam?
Yeah, that's definitely the last break of the evening.
Okay, we're joined by a studio audience now, 2 of 1. So this is my first podcast on the road, first live audience. This is a bunch of news.
This is groundbreaking.
It is.
We're taking it to the next level right here, right now.
Well, we'll see in the download count at least.
Okay, fair enough.
So you wanted to bring up a topic here to pull us to the finish. So what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, I think we should talk about music. I think it's something you definitely know a lot about, and
I might.
And I think I'm definitely active in music as well, and I think it'd be a good balance between the two of us to end this off. I know on politics, we definitely have the opposite views, and we went through some of the mechanical, which is more my side, so I think it's a good way to round it up.
Sure. So on that front then, I went to school for music for 2 years. I graduated. It's not like I went for 2 years and then I fucked off. And you've been playing piano since you were how old?
Probably like, I would say, I think it was maybe like 7 or 8.
And did you take up any other instruments?
Yeah, so I played some sax in high school, and
What type?
I started with an alto, so I played alto for a year in grade 10, and then I didn't do grade 11, but in grade 12 I played the baritone. And those were pretty much chosen for me because I played in grade 10 and 12, right? Like there's already all the people who picked in grade 9, right? I was just filling in, and then I left in grade 11, so again, just like, okay, well, you know, a sax, it's just bigger.
Yeah.
You're big, it's bigger,
Yep.
like...
Yeah, fair enough.
It you know, it works out. I did buy drums, and I played drums for a while. Actually, that's a funny...
I didn't know that. What kind of drums? Oh, go ahead.
That's a
with
good
your story.
little funny tangent. So, it kind of started, you know, or was a bit of my buying and selling career, if you will. I bought these drums at like a wholesale kind of store.
Do you know what they were?
No, like some shit off brand.
Okay.
It was $250.
Okay.
Or no, I bought them for $199. Sorry. I bought them for $199. It was like, you know, 2 toms, a floor tom, bass drum, snare.
A 5-piece.
Yeah, with a
Crash and a hi-hat.
a crash and a hi-hat.
Yeah,
like, yeah,
it's a
5-piece.
That's what I play on.
This
man.
was a while ago, so
I've
you
added
know,
some hardware, but the
Yeah.
5-piece is the way to go. It's
So $200. It was decent, right? It wasn't great. It was enough for me to learn, so I took lessons for a bit. Anyways, I stopped playing them. I sold the drums for $250 on Kijiji.
so you made $100 off your drums. That you played.
$50.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm like, shit, like, you know, there's so much money to be made in these markets where like people don't understand the product, right? And like, anyways, that's a whole other conversation. So I'm super fucking proud. It's like one of my like, you know, best like purchase and sell, because these drums were beat to shit when I was done, right?
Yeah.
So I turned, I don't know, grade 10, and I start working this job, right? And, you know, all the guys are older and whatever, right? And I tell this story,
And some guy stands up. He goes, "Fuck, that's where I know you from."
Oh shit.
And he's like, "Are you fucking serious? You only paid $200 for the drums? You sold them to me for $250?" I'm like, "Well, fuck. Like, I just started a week ago. This 40-year-old man, like, he came with his son, right? Like, but I didn't recognize him, right? He just looked like a dirty old guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, greasy mechanic.
No.
Oh yeah, fuck. I shoved my foot fucking in my mouth. That's for sure. Like,
Whatever, man. Like,
it was fucking so funny though, and like that made the story even better. So
you won the deal though. That you made that one. You made it work for yourself, and if you find out he lost in the end, I mean, you lose. You lose the game. You lose the game, right?
I've had people message me after and say, "Oh, I found this online for cheaper," and I'm like, this is not my problem. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't lie to you. You didn't ask me how much I paid for it. I never told you I'm selling it for less. I want to sell it for more. I think it's worth this much. You agreed. Like, anything's worth what someone's willing to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
But to get back to our topic, so anyways, I took lessons from some guy. I used to go over to his house, right? He had 2 drum kits, so wasn't a professional teacher per se, but like, played in a band. He was like, maybe end of high school, like older kid. It was like really cheap, like $12.50, right? I'd pay him for lessons. He had 2 drum kits.
$12.50 for half an hour?
Yeah, $12.50 for half an hour. Fuck. But man, you got to remember, we're talking like, I don't know.
But like when I was in high school, like I made a lot
before
more
high
than that
school.
to teach.
Before high school.
No, I know, but like I'm saying, as a high school kid, like I charged like for half an hour was just under 20, I think 25
But I'm saying,
bucks.
I'm speaking
Which
from an
was cheap,
inflation
too.
aspect.
No, I know
I'm
that,
saying,
but
like,
come
the
on,
rate's gone
inflation
up.
from fucking when we were in grade what?
I don't think.
7?
Well, don't think it's just inflation, but like even those kinds of services, I think have just gone up. It was cheap, right? Like my dad knew his dad, whatever, right? But he had 2 drum kits, so he could sit there and play, and I'd sit there and play. But I didn't end up sticking it out that long. It's very loud, like you know what I mean. And actually, I did cadets as well, and I played drums, like at least practice with them. I never actually played in the like I guess in their marching band, but like I definitely went to some of the practices. They wanted everyone to get involved, but I said I'll pick drums because like I already know how to play. So I learned all like the military rhythms and shit like that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I could play a simple beat for people to play along with, but definitely no, I'm not going in any kind of fills or anything like that.
None?
No kind of fills for me. Like,
when's the last time you played?
Fuck, it would have been on your drums when we lived together in second year.
Oh, that long ago?
No, maybe I played once. Like, you brought your drums.
Yeah, I
when
had
we
them
lived
at the
together.
house.
Yeah, so maybe I played them once. But you know what I mean? I can hold a simple beat. I get how it works. I will say, like, playing the drums, and you can put your opinion in on this as well. Like, made me a lot more prepared for learning how to drive stick.
Using both feet.
Yeah, and being
That's
able to
interesting. I've never
consciously
thought about that.
Consciously be able to, like, I don't know. I really struggled with my left foot, like where there was like beats where you had to like, for example, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, lift the hi-hat for the third, like.
Yeah.
Right, like I struggled with that. Like I didn't have.
It is difficult.
I didn't have good control of my left foot.
Yeah,
right, I'm right-handed. My right foot, like I played soccer, ball hockey, like, you know what I mean? I'm pretty good with my feet, but I didn't have that training in my foot. Again, I was young, but like I just feel like even the practice I did was like made me so much better at it, right? Like even so when I went to go drive stick, right? Like I learned that night, I drove to school the next day, right? Like there was a quick turnover, and I think if I never played the drums, no way it would have happened. Like I wouldn't have had the motor skills and like the clutch foot.
I've actually never contemplated. I started playing drums when I was very young though, but I've never contemplated. I've literally never contemplated.
How long did it take you to learn how to drive stick?
I never had a choice. We didn't have any automatic cars.
Okay,
in the house,
so like, were you stalling for days and days, or you picked it up quick?
No.
No problem, because you know how to apply proper pressure and control the pressure with your left foot.
Yeah,
you do,
I guess.
right?
It's like I said, I never thought about it, but I guess I guess you're right.
When I was first learning, and like for a while, like man, like it's like an avid like fact in my mind.
Yeah. that's actually really, really interesting because I picked up stick very quickly. Like, I can tell you, like, when I learned to drive stick, I stalled the car in was leaving a parking lot or driving in around a parking lot, and I stalled twice in the parking lot. After that, I stalled once on the road in the middle of a major intersection, and I literally can't tell you if I stalled the car again. Because like once that happens, you're like, I'm never fucking doing this shit again.
Oh yeah.
Like if I told you the intersection and like the light turns green for everyone, I was turning left and the light turns green for everyone else, and like if I told you the intersection, you would be like, oh yeah, you fucking learned your lesson. And I fucking did. But yeah, I've never put two and two together that it would be from driving or from playing with my left foot on the clutch. That's interesting. That's actually really interesting. So how often do you practice? Because you play piano still, and no other instruments right now actively.
No other instruments. I tried starting guitar, and I lent my guitar to a friend long term. So then that kind of died out. So like, you know, and I'm not saying if I had it I would be any good by now, but I was starting to try and learn some little riffs. I don't know, like I struggle with chords with chunky fingers. Like even on piano now, like when I'm playing songs I played forever, I still like sometimes slip over on the other notes. Like whatever, you got chunky fingers is what's gonna happen, right?
How often do you practice?
I'd say like I go through phases, right? I think like everyone does. You know, there'll be times I'll play like once a week, and there'll be times in my life, months, if not a year goes by and I don't play. So
yeah,
I've had a piano at my house now for the last couple of years, so I've been pretty, at least once a month or twice a month I'll sit down and play for a good half hour or an hour. So it's not too bad, but honestly now, like I don't play necessarily, like I am obviously getting better, but I don't necessarily challenge myself. I just play like for enjoyment. I'll follow along with chords to a song. Like it's easy. I can like, it might be challenging at first, but like, I can pick it up pretty quick. Like no complicated riffs where it's like I have to sit there for an hour and figure it out.
Yeah.
I forgot how to read sheet music. Like I used to be able to do it. I can't anymore. I'm sure if I wanted to put the effort, I could get better at it, but at this time, like it's just not going to happen.
So I picked up the guitar in June, really, of this year. I started actively playing, and I still, as best I can, I try to do an hour of drumming every day and about half an hour of guitar every day, because I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I hadn't really played drums in about a year. And in February, I sat down at my kit and like I tried to play something that was very simple that I should have been able to play. And I was like, holy fuck, I can't do this anymore. And I was going to bed that night, like pissed off. I was fucking mad, dude, that I was like, I can't play drums anymore. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I might as well sell them. Like, I can't even tell people that I know how to play drums. Like, it's so fucking not where it should be. So literally the next day I woke up and I was like, no, the answer is I'm going to play for an hour every single day. So today, obviously, I'm not going to be able to do that because I came here right after work, and for some reason people get pissed when you play drums at 6 a.m. But, until that day changes.
No, I can definitely comment on that. Like, that's actually happened to me twice with piano. So, when I was like, I did start very young, but I did not play. I wouldn't even say I played my whole life, because like, I don't know, there was a lot of pressure for me to play. And like, the rule in my household was like, I had to get my grade 1. So I got my grade 1 written, my grade 1 practical, and I was so happy. I remember my sister had to take another year to get it, and I was so thankful I was not her. Like, I didn't want to see a piano. I didn't want to see a keyboard. We didn't even have a piano. We just had a little electric keyboard, like no touch tone weight, like basic.
Yep.
Right? And I went to like Royal Conservatory, so it was very classical, whatever. And then like when I went to high school and like everyone was playing music, like I ended up getting back into it. And I was like, fuck, like I can't even play anymore. Like I used to be able to
play songs I couldn't remember, and then like I was like, well, fuck, like I'm just gonna like learn some new songs. So I started learning again, and I got better, and I couldn't even tell you the timeline of the start and stop, but it happened again, right? I stopped at a certain point, and I wasn't really playing, and it wasn't as severe as the first time. Like I could pick up the songs after I tried them a couple times. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
But that's when I started saying like, no, I have to have a piano. So I got my first apartment size piano on Kijiji in our area.
Yep.
There's lots for free because the thing is, the things are so fucking bloody heavy. You know,
if you can pick it up,
yeah, and
you can have it.
And the other thing is they last for hundreds of years. So it's not like they're going bad, and people, you know, what are you going to do with an old piano? So I went and picked one up for free with some buddies from work, and actually like the idea caught on, and then I had to go with my buddy and pick him up a piano.
Yeah.
His wife wanted to learn piano, so we went and picked him one up. And actually now I've upgraded like the piano from another friend who had one, and you know, wanted to like store it long term, so I took it over and I gave it away. My piano I delivered to another friend. They didn't have means of like transport, so you know, I passed on mine that was like, you know, a little rougher and upgraded, and you know, but someone else, like a good friend of mine, got a piano, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And that's what's really helped me, right? Like, because then I look and I'm like, holy fuck, I got this big piano. You know, how hard was it to bring in here? I better play it once in a while, right?
Yeah.
And like the feeling, like the sound that comes out of like a real piano is not something that can be mimicked by speakers. And maybe if you have like the highest HD file and the best speakers, maybe you'll get pretty close. But, you know, for most of the time, like when you listen to music, it's not the same. And like, especially when you're playing, it's different as well. Like, I don't think I could ever play a keyboard again, I guess is the point I'm making.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think for me, like, I'm acoustic drums, like, as long as I possibly can. Like, I will not live in a townhouse or an apartment because, like, I can't play acoustic drums, and I won't do it. Like, so it's limiting as far as that's concerned. I mean, I know with a piano you don't really have that problem, but
keyboard, right?
No, I know, but like you said, like a keyboard, like I could play electric drums.
Yeah.
Right. And I did that for years.
Same, though.
And I don't like it's not that I don't like it, but it's not the same. It doesn't sound the same. It doesn't feel the same. It just doesn't have.
When you feel the vibration based on how hard you're hitting, and like, do you know what I mean? It resonating from different places. Like, it's a whole different experience.
Now I want to ask you about like more mainstream music aside from just what you're playing. So, I know the answers to some of these questions, but I'm going to ask you anyways. So
fair enough.
I know that you are a fan of, I would say your two big things are country music and then sort of like classic rock.
Yeah, I'd say you
fair?
hit the nail on the head. I go back and forth, and I think maybe not as much as some, but I'm definitely like appreciative. Like if it's a good song, like I can listen to it and like I can enjoy it. But my go-tos when I'm listening to music is definitely country music and classic rock, as you said. Country music, I've been to 3 Boots and Hearts festivals.
Yeah.
That's like one of the is it the largest?
I think it's it's the largest in Canada, and I think it's the second largest outside of Nashville.
Yeah,
like in the world. Like Nashville's number 1.
Yeah, so
for
it's
CMA Fest or whatever.
It's quite a large festival. It's a great time, and you know, I guess even the music, but mostly for me, and what those two types of music have in common is like people genuinely singing and people genuinely playing instruments. And country sometimes gets away with like drifting away from that, but for the most part, like I can appreciate that music, right? Like the electronic stuff, it's not as, I don't know, appreciable.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I understand your perspective. I wouldn't say that I agree with it, but I understand your perspective that the concept, especially at a live show, of like real instruments, quote unquote real instruments, is definitely, I would completely agree with you. Like I've seen EDM shows. I mean, I could have watched it on TV and gotten, other than the people around you, like it's a party, right? But I'll go to a nightclub. I don't need that specific DJ to play his song that night. I kind of I feel you there.
No, but lyrics, like you mentioned EDM, and I'm just like, well, fuck, like this is half of what I could get out of another song.
Fair enough.
Like I don't know, like lyrics are like
there are some lyrics in EDM music though. Like
I
you
know,
would
there's
get
a
pushback
couple.
on that.
Okay, there's a couple, but like I don't know, like if you can sing along to it, like I like singing along to music. I think that's a big thing of what attracts me to a song, and hence like the genres I listen to and I enjoy the most. Yeah, like just being able to sing along and like, you know, there being some sort of storyline. Like, I think that's like how most of our modern music started today, right? Like, you know, guys like, you know, Johnny Cash, like just literally like half of it could be words. He's not even singing. He's almost telling you, and then he sings the last word. You know what I mean? Like he's telling a story, and that's along with the music and him playing. And if, you know, if you ever go to play those kinds of artists, like I don't enjoy it because I can't sing like them. And like the music on the instrument is normally very straightforward. And it's like, fuck, like it is in the way he's able to tell a story. It's not even in like him playing the chords, right? It's normally what? I think so many Johnny Cash songs are like a 2-3 chord song.
Usually 3-chord songs.
Yeah, like tops, right? Like there's nothing impressive there, but like he's able to make that story, and like that's the big part of music for me. Like you definitely need to have the music background, and like when people can like understand the instrument and manipulate it in such a way that's different than everyone else, like I definitely can appreciate that as well, right?
Do you have a favorite artist?
I wouldn't say I have a favorite artist. I'm not a big one on favorites. Like saying like the car question, like I don't know, like I can't pick an absolute, right? Because everything has its like pros and cons.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So, if you don't have a favorite artist, do you have a favorite genre between the two?
I'm someone like that likes change. I do enjoy a certain amount of change, and I don't commit to one. And I'm currently on more of a country listening right now. I just came back, like Boots. I went to Boots and Hearts this year, right? So I'm in that phase, right? But I'll get sick of it eventually, or not sick of it, but it will get old. I've, you know, whatever all the new songs are, I've listened to, and I've, you know, reminisced and listened to some of the old ones as well. And I'll go back to like classic rock and, you know, try and explore some new songs while listening to like some of the old favorites. And I go back and forth from time to time. I wouldn't say I necessarily prefer one over the other, though.
So you say you're open to change.
Yes.
Right? So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Then. So if I was to send you, what do you use? Spotify, Apple Music?
Apple Music.
So if I was to send you a link on Apple Music to a death metal album that came out a couple of weeks ago, what's the likelihood of you listening to it?
Like if you sent it to me, like for our relationship and like how we know each other, if you sent it to me and said, "Hey Adam, I think you'll like this," I would definitely listen to it.
What about? I'm not saying I think you'll like it, but like I'm interested to know if you'll like it.
Well, I
have to be very clear about this.
I definitely, I think it gets like it's the same thing. It's a certain amount of respect. If you sent me something, the least I can do is listen to 3 or 4 minutes. Like, and who knows? Maybe there would be like. Although death metal is not my thing, right? Like even, you know, I think you remember from our road trip, one impressive fact, just to give you guys some facts about this road trip we went on. We drove 4,500 kilometers. We had 55 engine hours. And up until
we were trapped, the three of us were in the car for a long time.
Yeah, in that
we
F-150.
learned to get along.
And up until the last day, or maybe the second last day, we took turns between the three of us, me, Jacob, and another one of our roommates. We took turns picking a song, and we didn't repeat a song till the second last day.
No, we didn't.
We went through a lot of genres, too. And I think like we all enjoyed, and there was definitely like quite a large selection. And I think luckily the three of us are ones that like can appreciate, like have a similar appreciation.
Yeah.
For similar kind of music. Our other roommate at the time definitely has the classic rock, which I would say you have as well.
Definitely
right?
less so than the two of you, though.
Yeah, fair enough. But we definitely got into some of the heavier stuff here and there, and I definitely picked a couple songs to surprise you guys. Yeah, no, because there's a time and a place for everything, right? I really believe that's true, and I think even in the most obscure situation, like time and place, like as weird as it seems, in the right time, in the right place, it's normal. And I guess to bring it back to the media, right? Like how many posters they have of, a meme or whatever you want to call it, where like they zoom in on a little part, and it's like this is what the media show you. When you look at the big picture, that's not really what's happening. And I think this is like the same way.
All right, Adam. Well, we are at a total of 2 hours and 30 minutes. There might be a little bit that's cut out here and there, but I think we've covered all we need to cover today. But I would love to do this again. I'd love to again invite our mutual friend from down south.
Yeah, we'll have
to sit down too.
We'll have to talk to him and see if he's up to it. If not, I'm sure he will be. Like he's pretty open and he's pretty vocal. He's definitely more of a social media warrior than I am. I'm normally pretty reserved as far as what I put in writing or take the time to write out. I'm more of a talker, so this was great. So thanks for having me, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you guys so much for listening through to the end, and thank you so much to my guest, Mr. Adam, the engineer. Hopefully you enjoyed your time with me, Adam, and hopefully you, the listeners, enjoyed our conversation. I know that I sure did. And yeah, I try to put out the best content I can for you guys. So if you have anything you want to tell me, criticism, good, bad, or ugly, reach out to me anytime on social media. All my inboxes are open. You can just post randomly. I don't really care. Just reach out to me and let me know what you think. You can also hit me up privately through email at www.laughtolearnpodcast.com using the contact page. If you think you would make a great guest, hit me up because I am totally open. I have some really cool stuff to announce right now. I'm working on 3 interview podcasts. One is going to be with someone who everyone who knows me it'd be really predictable, but he works in the marijuana industry in a grow op, so a legal one, so we can actually talk about it, which is awesome. So look forward to that. We haven't scheduled that one yet, but I'm really hoping for it. And then the other, we are putting together a Sober October team, so there are going to be 4 of us, hopefully. That's going to be kind of crazy. I need to upgrade some equipment to get 4 people on a podcast. But we're hoping to do a Sober October challenge, and you will hear more about that in the coming weeks. So you guys can take part if you're down, or you can just listen to us and enjoy us suffering through it. But there will be tons of stuff for you guys to follow. You'll be able to follow all of our journeys over social media and through the podcast there. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for all the support. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Come back every single Tuesday for new content. Everything I do is completely ad-free. I only do it for your enjoyment. So if you did enjoy the podcast, please share it over on somewhere on social media. Tell people about it in person, because in person is really the best way by word of mouth to spread a podcast. Post it on Instagram, post it on Twitter, post it on Snapchat, post it, I don't know, somewhere else that all you young kids who love my content like to spend your time. Whatever social media app is cool right now, post it over there. MySpace? Don't know. No, Mom. MySpace isn't cool anymore. Post it everywhere that you can. Please and thank you. Come back next week. I really look forward to talking to you all again. So, as I like to sign off each and every week, ladies and gentlemen, please keep on laughing and keep on learning.